We are young, heartache to heartache we stand. No promises, no demands. Love is a battlefield. We are strong, no one can tell us we're wrong. Searching our hearts for so long, both of us knowing love is a battlefield. We're going to give it a couple minutes. I got hair in my mouth. Uh, I got it. Okay. We are young, heartache to heartache we stand. No promises, no demands. Love is a battlefield. We are strong, no one can tell us we're wrong. Searching our hearts for so long, both of us knowing love is a battlefield. I'm live now. Excuse me. Wow, it's just one person. That's cool. You've been dying to know how this eclipse is going to F us up. Well, we're going to talk about that. Hi, Clara. Hi, Lizzie. Lizzie. Sorry, getting my water. That's the thing. If I ever, if I ever sold anything, it would probably be lime water. And also these salt packets I have to take for my pots. Because, oh, I have another salt packet here. Searching our hearts for so long, both of us knowing love is a battlefield. Denise, my Norwegian friend, how are you? You were the first one here. I didn't see you. I can't see who's here on this stupid software. Well, excuse me. I'm just getting over being sick. And I was late today because my daughter stayed home sick from school. Poor baby. So she just went to her mom's. Oh, wait. Solar fire. Solar fire. Something makes sense. Hi, Shemai. I don't know. Am I saying your name correct? Shima. Shema. It's so great to see you. I love it when my international, well, I'm assuming you're international. I shouldn't just assume. But I love my international friends and when they show up. It makes it way more interesting. When it's just a bunch of Americans, it's just, it's like an echo chamber sort of thing. Although America right now, the United States is probably the most divided country, It's so funny because we think of the United States in terms of the Sibley chart, which, oops, you know what? I left a door open. I gotta go close the door. You see, I don't want neighbors to hear me talking about all kinds of personal stuff with you all, so. And they probably think I'm weird enough already, although we're all siloed. How many people know a bunch of people in their apartment complexes? But what I was saying is that we're used to the United States being a Cancer, right? July 4th, 1776. Hello, ear! How are you, my darling? Which puts the United States at Cancer. Cancer sun with the Sag rising. But, I did esoteric astrology for a long time. Alice Bailey, right, in the Theosophical movement. And Alice Bailey would say that the United States is Gemini. Gemini sun with Aquarius rising, like me. And if you look at the history of the United States being totally divided from the get-go, there's the Massachusetts Bay Colony and the Virginia Colony and all the way to the Civil War. And now once again, here we are with a bunch of nonsense. So, where people are threatening Anheuser-Busch just because they had one trans woman do an Instagram post promoting Budweiser. Like, get over it. Anyway, we're going to talk about the eclipse. I still have a good amount of your charts up. I got ear. I might have Denise somewhere. Do I have Clara's? Hello, Clara. I always think of Clara Barton. She was the famous Civil War doctor that started the Red Cross. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm a history nerd. I am. I have a 4th house Mercury. Gosh, I look chubby. I need to get rid of this. But I'm getting a chest, aren't I? That's the good part about hormones. The bad part is, the bad part is this belly that won't go away, But testosterone makes your hairline, makes you bald, really. And that's the great thing about female hormones is they, help that. Clara! So let's get into this because I tend to, go off into tangents. Excuse me. So, thank you, Lizzie. Lizzie the Leslie. I'm sorry, I know you're not. It's just, I love saying that. That was from a John Waters movie, Lizzie the Leslie. I love John Waters, right? He's so gay. But Divine, oh my God, I love Divine. If anyone knows Divine. I don't know if Divine was actually trans or just a transvestite or drag queen, sorry. You love testosterone. Yeah, I mean, I love women who are on testosterone, so. But yeah, no, it's very good. I've known a couple other women on testosterone, so yeah. I mean, not just trans men, but cis women who take testosterone. So, for all sorts of reasons. Well, here's the chart. Here, let's go to the eclipse. Let's go to the eclipse. Emanation. So, here's the 19th. So, you can see here. Oops. Hours. I want to go hours. You remember Lizzie the Leslie? You've had your days. Oh, sweet. Well, we've all had our days, haven't we? We've all had our weeks and years. So, I mean, I haven't been with a dude in a while, so, I need to find a couple. That's what I need to do. That's Gemini, I need a couple or a throuple or something, Something where, I'm just, like not super committed, I guess. Because this is a lot of time. Like I spend a couple hours getting ready for all this stuff. I actually spend more than a couple hours. I spend almost all day looking at eclipses and stuff. Because it's very interesting stuff, isn't it? So this is it. 29 degrees Aries. The first thing that should probably jump out to you is that Jupiter's not too far away. Jupiter's 7 degrees, right? And so this will be a little bit of a Jupiterian eclipse. Now, this is also a north node eclipse, meaning that this solar eclipse here is conjunct the north node. We'll talk about what all that stuff means. Excuse me. I have some fun notes here to keep me on track. Sorry, still getting over my sickness. I'm so sorry. Please pardon me. So, of course, it'll be quite interesting to see, if this eclipse aspects anything in your chart. Now, when it comes to stuff like this, we're really looking for squares and oppositions. We're looking for angular aspects. Excuse me, more so than trines or sextiles. And if you talk to a lot of astrologers, especially traditional astrologers, they won't look at trines or sextiles to points in your chart, just between planets and planets to points, right? Like planets to ascendant or whatever, or midheaven. But, when it comes to, say, like your nodes or whatever, they say typically squares and oppositions. I mean, really, it's the same thing with every other point but the ascendant for the most part. So typically, the hard aspects are stronger. But I digress here. So you'll notice here that the eclipse is a new moon, meaning that the moon and the sun are conjunct, right? Oh, what are eclipses, right? Eclipses are when you have a new moon or a full moon, and they're within, like 15 degrees of the nodes, right? So, and we'll talk about why that is in just a second. But, más o menos 15 degrees, more or less. Like 10 to 12 degrees, some say. Like Demetra George, who a lot of this material comes from. Oh, please, before I forget, like the goddamn stream, subscribe if you haven't, and share, and tell your fucking friends. Because I'm serious, help a sister out. Help a sister out. So anyway, please, like the stream, subscribe, share this stuff, share my shit, blah, blah, blah. Help me out. You're my only hope. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Please, please, please. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Courtney, hello. Please like the stream. You're watching while working? Hope my day has been awesome. Well, I was working most of the day on a bunch of this stuff and everything, but which is great. But my daughter, I had to pick her up from school because she threw up, and her mom just picked her up. So, I scrambled to prepare for this. I'm always like the kid who's preparing for class right before, or studying for the test, right before. Thank you, Heather. Please, the rest of you, like and share and subscribe, because I need your help, and I'm crazy. So I should be a car saleswoman, really. I'm going nuts. I'm manic. I'm in a panic if I don't get rid of these cars. Cal Worthington Dodge. I'm from San Diego, so it was all about Cal Worthington. So anyway, if it's a new moon, that means the moon, right, is eclipsing the sun, which is a solar eclipse. If it's a full moon, right, and you know what a full moon looks like. I don't need to go back in time, do I? No. Do you know what a full moon looks like? It's when the moon is opposite the sun, right? Do I have my moon phases here? Moon opposite the sun. Hopefully you all know that. And you see here, new moon, moon conjunct the sun. It's my little graphic I like, So, excuse me. Hello, Christina. Hello, my darling. If we have time, oh wait, no, we already did yours. Yeah, Cal Worthington. Go see Cal, go see Cal, go see Cal. I mean, I was like 5 years old watching those commercials, and they got stuck in my head because I'm a Taurus Mercury. Taurus Mercuries tend to have a really good memory. This is so great that we have the usual people showing up. This is so wonderful because I feel like you're friends. I feel like you're all my friends. And that we talk about this shit. So anyway, excuse me. And we talked about a full moon, right, is the earth eclipsing the moon, right? The earth goes between the sun and the moon. Oh, you're an OC fangirl. That's right, you are. You're OG. That's right, my darling. So you remember me when I was, before I came out. Before I came out. If anyone remembers me before I came out, you probably remember how awkward I was. And everyone saw me with my ex-GF. And that was my identity. I was wrapped up in that relationship. And you'll never find yourself in someone else. I learned that the hard way after 37 years. You'll never find yourself in someone else. And I'd rather be myself than be with anyone else. So anyway, this eclipse has an exact conjunction with your Saturn at 29 degrees Aries. Well, first of all, Lydia, you have an unhappy Saturn. Saturn's in fallen Aries because Saturn's exalted in Libra. So it would be interesting to see, but you have Jupiter there. Well, Saturn 29 degrees, yeah. Well, hopefully Jupiter softens the blow a little bit. But that would definitely be sort of like a lesson, right? That would be some sort of discipline that you're working on. That would be, I mean, I'll come out and say it. That would be a challenging lesson, probably. And remember, it would be over the next 6 months. So, but we'll get to horoscopes for each rising sign for this. That's like the whole second hour. And we'll look at your charts who are here. If, gosh, I can't remember her name. But if what's her face shows up that didn't get her synastry read, I'm going to read that for her, because I felt bad. I was just so tired. I went for 3 goddamn hours. So anyway, this isn't sex, like I could do 3 hours of that, but 3 hours of this, like my voice gets hoarse. So, I mean, you have to take smoke breaks in between, and all that sort of thing. Not this, because that'll ruin my voice, but you know what I mean. So what are the lunar nodes? Because I just talked about eclipses, right? Being conjunct to the lunar nodes. The lunar nodes are where the path of the moon, right? The orbital path. Let me bring up my fun graphic because this graphic is really good. This graphic is really good. Where is my graphic? Nope, not that one. Not that one. What about this one? Nope, not that one. Not that one. Where's my pictures, dang it? Where's my pictures? Oh, here they are. Okay. Here they are, here they are. Where's my goddamn nodal thing? Ugh. Oh. Oh. Okay, let me go to my Twitter and I'll show you. Is this my Twitter? Is this my Twitter? No, anyway. Ugh. Oh my goodness. I need another browser. I need another browser. It does this silly stuff. I don't know why. Well, I do know why it does it. Okay. Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Now, here's my Twitter. Here's my Twitter. Where's my Twitter? No! You son of a gun. Why does it do this shizzuzh? Just log me in, you mother. Are you kidding me? There we go. Because I really do have to show you this picture. Okay. Ooh, Marianne Williamson. Everyone check out Marianne Williamson. She's my mama. Vote for Marianne Williamson. Here's my Twitter. Now I'll show you this fun picture. Notes. Wait, I want my. Where's my page? And search for my stuff. I swear to God, this is so annoying. I swear I had that picture. So anyway, I'm pulling it up really quick on my phone. This is so embarrassing. I thought I already had it up, which is why I didn't pull it up. Warm it up, Chris. I'm about to. Warm it up, Chris. That's what I was born to do. Anyone remember Crisscross? Crisscross? The dudes that had their jackets on backwards. You mother. I swear to God. Here's my picture. Jesus Christus. Ugh. And I can't just show it to you off my phone. Ugh, I'm so sorry. Stupid, stupid. How did I not have this on my computer? Okay. And now I'll just pull it up on my email. I'll just pull it up on my email. Just pull it up on my email. Mm-hmm. Refresh. Refresh. Don't do it when you want to go do it. So, well, anyway, the nodes are where the path of the moon intersects the path of the sun. Or rather, it's called the ecliptic, which is the imaginary path of the sun around the earth. But we know that it's actually the plane of the earth's orbit around the sun. I'm so going to lose my goddamn mind. I am absolutely about to blow a gasket. I hate everything right now. You could tell I'm an emotional person. Send it, you mother. Send it. Did you send it? Did you send it? No, you didn't send it. Oh yeah, you did. Okay. There we go. Why don't you download? Anyway, here's the image, okay? I'm so upset right now. That was such a waste of time. But it's my fault. Like, what can I do? I'll just be mad at myself. So, you're the kicking type of flavor that makes you say, "You're too much, Chris." Oh, yeah. I'm glad you remember. Someone remembers Crisscross. I had it on cassette tape. I forget which one I had. But I had one of them on cassette tape. It was very eclectic. I had Crisscross. My older brother gave me NWA on cassette tape. So I was singing, F the police coming straight off the underground. No, got a bag because I'm brown. Not the other colors the police think they have the authority to a minority. Anyway, so I know the whole dang thing. But anyway, so the nodes are where the path of the moon, right? See, this is the moon's orbit. It's at a tilt of about 5 degrees compared with, right, the Earth's orbit here. So you see, the Earth's orbit intersects the moon's orbit intersects the Earth's orbit, ascending, right, towards celestial north, which is over here. And so that intersection is called what? The north node, or the ascending node. And then the one behind the Earth here you can't see is where the moon intersects the Earth's orbital plane once again, and that's called the south node, or the descending node, because it's descending towards celestial south. So, it's quite intuitive. But so why do you think that the nodes have anything to do with eclipses? Well, and why would an eclipse happen when it's within, say, 15 degrees of the nodes, the moon, right? If the moon and or sun are within 15 degrees of the nodes, because that suggests what? An alignment between Earth, moon, and sun, right? So, so that's why eclipses happen, because from our vantage point on Earth, it's such a curious thing. From our vantage point on Earth, it seems as though the moon and the sun are the same size. Oops. I want to make this bigger. So anyway, and then nodal precession. Nodal precession. You probably have heard of the precession of the equinoxes when it comes to the Earth, or axial precession, right? And that's due to the wobble of the Earth, or the axis of the Earth itself, and how that precesses over time. The nodes also precess over time. And I wanted to show you this really cool video about the nodes precessing. this is, well, we don't need all the music necessarily. So, you see here, the plane of the Earth's orbit is the ecliptic, right? And you see the nodes here. And you see the nodal axis spinning bit by bit, right? And it goes in the opposite direction of the Earth's orbit, right? Or what we call going through the zodiac, secondary motion. Thank you, Courtney, for putting... Hi, Jennifer. How are you, sweetheart? Anyway, this is just really cool because this visual, it shows you astronomically what's going on. And what were ancient astrologers doing? They were symbolically interpreting astronomical phenomena, right? Twice a year, the line dividing the up and down sides of the nodes is facing the sun. So this is the nodal precession time. So nodal precession is essentially the time it takes for the north node to return to the same place it was relative to, we say the vernal equinox, but to return to its astrological place. So the time it takes, say, to return to 29 degrees Aries, or whatever it's going to be. So this is pretty cool. So you see the nodes move clockwise, which is the opposite direction of secondary motion, which is objects moving through the zodiac. And look, a draconic month. That's the same period in which the moon returns to the same node of its orbit. What does that mean? Let's say the moon is conjunct the north node. A draconic month is the time it takes for the moon to do a full revolution back to the north node, essentially. But you can start it at either node. So, draconic astrology and the draconic zodiac is basically determined by the nodes. I don't know much about it except for that, really, because I'm still learning everything about ancient astrology bit by bit, which is sort of impossible because we don't have access to everything. Anyway, but you sort of get the picture here about, you see the nodes rotating here. And if you think about it like a line moving through the earth, like an axis, this visual video is so good. I hope this was helpful for you guys to understand what's happening with, oops, we don't care about that. But what's happening with the nodes. Okay. So anyway, where were we? Let's bring back up the chart because we want to get to some of this stuff. Don't worry, we're going to get to this specific thing in a second. So we talked about a draconic month. So what do the lunar nodes mean? And we need to know what the lunar nodes mean because eclipses, right? They were called the eclipsing places by ancient astrologers. The eclipsing places. And in Babylonian astrology, well, back in ancient Mesopotamia, not just Babylonia, but probably, Assyria, who knows how far back, right? But we see that they were focused on eclipses quite a bit. And so eclipses were sort of the primary phenomena that they were interpreting. And they sort of associated eclipses. Well, we'll get to all that sort of stuff in a little bit. But they were called the eclipsing places, the nodes. And when you saw an eclipse, right, it looked like something was devouring the sun or the moon, that shadow. So it became known as a dragon. And that's where it got the name, the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, because it appeared as though this dragon was devouring the sun. Now, I'm reminded of, I forget which pyramid it is, but there's a pyramid in South America that has a big serpent, coming down from it. And on I want to say it's one of the solstices. Perhaps it's the summer solstice. But the light shines in such a way to give the serpent, a shadow of whatever. But I thought of that right now, and I wonder if that has anything to do with eclipses. Although people in India and ancient Mesopotamia wouldn't have any contact with that civilization, and they were a bit older. So, excuse me, I want to say that was Maya. I want to say that was Mayan. But anyway, I really don't go in for that Graham Hancock nonsense because there's no evidence of it. I would be ecstatic if there were evidence of transatlantic trade. Excuse me. I would be ecstatic if there was evidence of ancient high technology, but there's not. So until there is, I'm not going to stress on it. I'm going to focus on stuff that I can find evidence for, right? And just remember, whenever anyone tries to naysay astrology to you, like, that's not scientific. You're like, yeah, it's not. It's not. It's not a science. It's not meant to be scientific. Hi, Ashlyn. Hi, Hector. Hector. But you could tell people it's not scientific and it's not intended to be scientific. Although in ancient times, astrologers were called mathematicians because they were doing pretty complex calculations. And I'm going to, well, I'm not going to say out loud because I shouldn't jinx myself, but everyone should know, if they're going to be an astrologer, how to calculate some of these things on their own by hand. Because God forbid, I mean, Chris Brennan just had a great podcast on calculating charts or casting charts by hand, right? Which is a very, it's a very involved process. So it's not hard math, but it takes calculations. Hard math, right, is when you have to start doing logarithms and stuff like that, which you have to do for some of the calculations. So, but anyway, I don't want to go back to logs. Everyone loves a log. Everyone something log. Come on and get your log. So eclipsing places. In ancient astrology, the nodes were known to increase or decrease. So the north node was said to increase things, while the south node was said to decrease them. That means the north node would amplify both benefics and malefics, right? So for example, I have Mars in Gemini and my north node in Gemini. They are nowhere near conjunct, but they're in the same sign, right? So, conjunct by sign, essentially. I mean, not conjunct, but you know what I mean. So it's going to amplify conflict for me, right? Whereas Jupiter's in the same sign as the south node. So it's going to decrease good fortune for me. Well, I mean, that's one way of reading it. And I choose not to read it that way because I want increased fortune and I want less conflict because I'm a Libra moon. But that's the way ancient astrologers read them. The north node would amplify things, whereas the south node would mitigate them or make them decrease in their qualities or significations. So, well, how about Vedic astrology? And I got this from Demetra George, but so, they're called Rahu and Ketu. And Rahu Ketu, was the dragon, right, that devoured the sun. So one of the meanings here is desire for increase and material acquisition. So in Vedic astrology, they thought of the north node as sort of what you want but could consume you. It's like your passion, like what pulls you. Whereas the south node had to do with desire for release. Excuse me. And surrender to emptiness, as Demetra George says, which, in Vedic astrology, it had to do with what's called moksha, or liberation. It had to do with removing oneself from the wheel of samsara, or illusion, right? The wheel of rebirth, of conditioned existence, where basically it's just pain and suffering, I mean, the anyway, that's a whole other thing. We should do a whole episode about Buddhism at some point. That would be cool. Well, because I don't just do astrology, I do religion too. And the occult. And politics and current events. So this is a wonderful mix of shit. So anyway, the spiritual path or path of liberation. So, now in modern astrology, we started adding modern and evolutionary astrology. If you're familiar with, say, Stephen Forrest or Jeffrey Wolf Green, right? And they sort of treat the nodes in all these sort of karmic ways. And really, everything is karmic. I mean, tell me what's not karmic. Yes, would love that. What would you love? Hello, priestess. Hello, my darling. What would you love, Ashlyn? What would you love, my darling? I want to know. Anyway, well, back to it. Liberation. Oh, Jeffrey Wolf Green and the evolutionary astrologers. So they started introducing all this idea of, past lives and karma and all this sort of stuff. Where did they get that from in modern astrology? Well, Alan Leo is sort of the granddaddy of modern astrology. And what was he? He was a theosophist. I grew up in the theosophical tradition myself. Excuse me, and that's where I primarily learned esoteric astrology. So he was a theosophist. And the whole premise of theosophy was bridging the religious traditions of the East and the West, right? Which was very idealistic. And Buddhism religion discussion. Oh, yeah. That would be great. Yeah, that would be wonderful. We would have fun with that. I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not any particular religion. Um, but I'm very much obsessed with religion. So yeah, we should do lots of religion discussions at some point. I really do love the Gospels, though. I get so much from the Gospels. It's esoteric doctrine. It really is. If you read the Gospels, um, as an occultist, or I mean, even just I hate the word spiritual. I almost said a spiritual person, but someone with the right kind of eyes, someone who's felt a little bit more than themselves, if that makes any sense to anyone. I don't know if it will. If you've ever had the sensation of just being here, just being. Anyway, everyone should watch my video on Vichara. We should do that maybe during this thing, during the end. The one practice that I preach. Anyway, so we're talking about modern astrology. Alan Leo, the granddaddy, right? He was a theosophist. And so they stationed him in India for a bit because they made India sort of the head of the Theosophical Society for a while. The Theosophical Society was started in 1875 by Madame Blavatsky. Um, I got to do a whole episode on her and theosophy just on their own. That is wild. It's a wild story. I mean, comic books aren't that wild. So, quite frankly, excuse me. And there are little old ladies that have built their whole lives around this. I say little old ladies because those are mainly who's in theosophy now. It's just old ladies. Excuse me. So anyway, and the Alice Bailey material. I have issues with it to a certain extent, but I think everyone should read it. It's very important. Connotation versus detonation. You get what I mean by spiritual person. Yeah, it's hard to explain, but, there are people who've become a little less selfish. Bit by bit, it's about stripping away layers of pretense, of conditioning of what we thought we were. Until we're nothing at all. Eventually, nothing at all. Nothing at all. Anyway, so the whole idea with modern astrology is that the North Node is sort of like the direction you're moving in, your destiny. Whereas the South Node is like your past life, right? Your recapitulation, the way you started this life, or at least, the first half of it, or not half, but, up to your Saturn return. You're still doing your young living, right? Well, shoot, I'm still doing my young living and I'm almost 40. Please tell me I don't look 40. Please tell me I don't look 40 because I'm turning 40 in just a few months. In May. Oh my gosh. In 1 month. 1 month. 1 month in a couple days. Oh, what am I going to do? Besides turn into an old crone. Like, why couldn't I have come out 10 years ago? So any recapitulation, past life qualities, that sort of stuff. And you know what? You can read it that way. And oftentimes in readings, I read it that way because I don't want to read the more difficult way for the nodes because it spells bad things for me. Thank you, Ashlyn. Thank you. Thank you. So anyway, what do eclipses mean? Well, eclipses were seen as ill omens back in the day, right? Especially in ancient Mesopotamia. We talked about the dragon symbolism, right? Eclipses were used to determine or read collective phenomena, right? Or phenomena with collective effects. So like earthquakes, flooding, the death of a king. We see these tablets that say if an eclipse happens, conjunct this planet, then a king will die or whatever. But they were seen as ill omens. Hello, Erica. Hi, sweetheart. Your South Node is in Cancer in the 5th house, so you were just a housewife, I guess. Well, it's the 5th house. You were just a housewife. Thank you, Ear. Thank you, thank you. 5th house. Well, I have my North Node in the 5th house. So you see when your North Node's in the 11th house, like you would have it, opposite the 5th. Usually that has to do with, becoming idealistic. The 5th house is more about pleasure and your fun and your kids and your stuff and all that sort of thing. You having fun. Whereas as you get older, bit by bit, especially after your second nodal return, that's the other thing about modern astrology, is they say the North Node really kicks in after your second nodal return, which, the first one is about 18.6 years, right? So double that, we get to around 37, 38, right? I always say around 38 years old. And that's when we start to move in that direction. Embrace my 40s, it's not that bad. Yeah, I mean, what else am I going to do, right? It's just, I'm starting with like the dating thing again, and getting on dating apps and meeting through friends or whatever. And it's like, I'm old. I feel old. I mean, I'm still young. We are young. Heartache to heartache we stand. What about this eclipse, Mr. Man? Love is a battlefield. So, right, the death of a king. We know that new moons, right, are quite frequently seen as beginning. You're 41, fun age. I mean, I date a lot of women in their 40s. So, I don't know what it is. I'm more attracted to people older or younger than myself. Plus or minus 10 years, I always say. That's my threshold, plus or minus 10 years. So, I know that probably sounds creepy, but that's my threshold. So, I don't think it's that bad. So, I don't know. It's not like I'm James Woods or something. 40 is prime time, I think. Well, yeah, especially for women, And being on hormones, like it's made, I'm so sorry to be graphic, but it's made orgasms so much better. Like, I understand what cis women are saying now about foreplay because it takes me longer to get, you know, worked up. I mean, I'll be in the mood, but like to get me like, go like foreplay's a big thing now. And then it takes me longer to finish now. And again, more in the lines of my gender. So I just think it's an interesting thing how all that stuff changes. But it's so much better. Like, gosh, orgasms are so much more intense and they last longer. So I don't know if I should be saying all that online here. You're 32 and you've never been attracted to someone your age or younger. Well, you probably got some Saturn stuff going on, my love. I know I do, right? And I have a mommy kink and a kind of a daddy kink, but more a mommy kink. Which is all very Saturnian stuff in a way. Or lunar, I guess, too. I have Sun conjunct the moon. Moon conjunct Saturn. Saturn conjunct the moon. My brain is... Now let's get back to eclipses. So, the other thing, we know that new moons, no, you should be saying it, you love it. Well, yeah, it's fun for me, and I have everything in my fifth house, right? Well, my north node. So for me, having the north node in the fifth house, coming from the modern perspective, as I got older, I would be having more sex and more fun. And, bit by bit, but I sure could use a lot more fun and pleasure, that's for sure. This is a lot of work, but I enjoy it. So, but when it's in the 11th house, like you have it, Ashlyn, it's about starting to develop idealism, goals, that sort of stuff. I have my South Node in the 11th house. I'm real, and I hope I'm real. Am I real? Am I even here? Well, the only thing you know for sure is that you are here. I'm very fond of saying that because that is the crux of all of this. Ultimately, nothing matters. None of this matters except for consciousness. And where does consciousness come from? And how are you? Where does the sensation of you, the you-ness of you, that sense of I am, that sense of being an individual, where does that come from? Is it an epiphenomenon of the human brain? Is it something deeper and more spiritual? Is it something that comes from the divine? Is there divine? I don't know. These are things for each of us to investigate. And I don't believe in anything except for one thing I have ultimate conviction in, that you and I can know this life, our source. I have complete conviction in that. I just don't work hard enough towards it. No one really does. Why? Because we're attached. Hello, Kitty Katsu. So existential. It's so existential. I hope not sporadically. Oh my gosh. And I love Paul Rudd in that movie. He's so cute in it. He's so cute. They make him so boyish, Your north node is conjunct your ascendant by 1 degree. So that we don't really look at points conjunct other points so much. Like we don't look at nodes conjunct nodes, or ascendants conjunct ascendants, or ascendants conjunct nodes, or midheavens. We look at planets conjunct those things. So, especially for synastry, and I did this stuff for years. I would be like, oh my God, my ascendant is trine your ascendant. It doesn't really mean anything, And even still, it would be more about the angular aspects, to all that. But yeah, Clueless is one of my favorite movies too. I got a 45 and a shovel, and I don't think anyone would miss you. I love when the gay dude says nice stems, Oh my goodness. Swoon. I love Brittany Murphy. Okay, enough Clueless. Sorry. Should I leave a note? Oh, it's such a good movie. Oh my God, it's such a good movie. So anyway, new moons are big beginning or new moons are beginnings, right? New beginnings. It's the beginning of the lunar cycle. Full moons are endings. It's the end of the lunar cycle, isn't it? That's our reaping time, our harvesting time. You're still working on being a goal-oriented person. Well, don't worry, you have some time to go. You're only 32. So, but it's also being aligned with causes, right? In groups, things like that. Well, in modern astrology, the groups thing came later. I know. Rest in peace, Brittany Murphy. Rest in power, my girl. God, she was gorgeous too. Oh, that's totally my type. Those big eyes, big, big eyes. You know, and she was a little scandalous too. I mean, she had that, that dirty vibe a little bit. I'm not trying to be mean or derogatory. It's just that thing I like, that fast vibe deep down. You hate groups? Well, yeah, but it doesn't have to be groups. It's often like ideals and causes and things like that. For me, having an 11th house south node, I joined groups all growing up. I was in political groups, I became a mason, I was in spiritual groups, right? So, I joined a tarot group when I was like 20 or 19, something like that. So, and then as I got older, especially, over the past year or so, 38, 39, I've been trying to have more fun. So, and I came out actually just around a fifth house eclipse for me in Gemini. So that's quite interesting. June of last year. No, June of 2021. I'm sorry. June of 2021. June of 2021. So it's been 2 years now that I've been out. So when it comes to eclipses, a solar eclipse is like big beginnings, right? Like big beginnings. Whereas a lunar eclipse is sort of like big endings. But it can go both ways between solar and lunar eclipses. So that's why we look at the axis of houses that the nodes are in, so to sort of determine, the symbolic eclipse cycle. You're a virgin who can't drive. That was way harsh, Ty. Oh, I love that movie. That was way harsh, Ty. So good. And you know what? Alicia Silverstone was in a commercial recently, and she still looks good. When I was a kid, I had the biggest crush on her. Well, I liked the darker girls really. I had the biggest crush on Fairuza Balk, right, from The Craft. But I first saw her in The Return to Oz in the 80s when I was a kid. And it's such a good movie. Return to Oz. Oh, one of my favorite movies growing up. 80s movies, but yeah. Hey there, Lilith Meow. Hello. Fifth house, South Node, Aries here. Kind of conjunct Venus. So in ancient astrology, they'd say that sort of diminishes your Venus a bit. In fifth house, South Node. So, as you get older too, it's a bit more about idealism and causes and things like that. It's about the fifth house North Node is about slowly becoming the center of attention, sort of, focusing on your own pleasure, your own fun. We see actors and actresses, performers, things like that, right? Whereas the 11th house, it's going to be people that are more aligned with a purpose or a cause, something that's idealistic or looking ahead or looking forward, right? Or being associated with like-minded people. That's where groups comes from, and hobbyists and things like that. People who are like-minded, who share your perspective, or people who help you, right? But the difference is that it's less about you and yourself and more about other people. Whereas for me, growing up, it was more about other people, and bit by bit, it's becoming more about me. So, but yeah, I mean, I joined tons of groups growing up. So, Anyway, so, we don't need to stick around on those particulars. We'll get to your particulars in just a bit, but suffice it to say that solar eclipses are big, big beginnings, and lunar eclipses are like big, big endings. Chris Brennan made a Twitter post that was quite interesting. He said eclipses bring the best and worst events of our lives that may have been a bit hyperbolic, perhaps. I don't know why I keep forgetting that word, hyperbolic. It's one of the ones I use all the time. So it may have been a bit hyperbolic, but quite frankly, I'll give you an example here. This wasn't an eclipse. It was rather a progressed eclipse. In my progress chart, and you can watch my other episode on progressions if you're interested in what those are, but in my progress chart, my father took his own, he unlived himself with a firearm around my progressed new moon, which was an eclipse, right? So it brought one of the worst events of my life. It also brought the next worst event of my life. I had my progressed lunar eclipse, right? So full moon, it was a progressed full moon. And that's when my divorce stuff started. So, that was the second. Do I use zodiacal releasing with a synastry or composite chart? I've never done that. Because you need a birth time. You need an exact birth time and place for a composite chart. Or sorry, for zodiacal releasing. And you don't have that with a composite chart because you're just taking midpoints. You don't have a birth time or place, right? You could try and do it with a Davison chart, which, takes like midpoints in space and time. You could try it with the Davison chart, I think, but I've never tried it before. I'm still learning zodiacal releasing myself, bit by bit. I've been studying it on and off for 4 years. I first found out about it in 2018. Well, that's 5 years ago. Yeah. I first found out about it in, 2017. I wasn't using whole sign houses at the time. There was a lovely young lady, right, who was part of my spiritual group that I had, and will still, have feelings for. And she got me into Chris Brennan. And I was totally resistant. I'm like, ew, whole sign houses? This is so stupid. Why would anyone do this? And then I did experiments and I watched it work. So, and then I got into ancient astrology bit by bit. It sucked me in like quicksand. And before I knew it, I pretty much abandoned other stuff. For the most part, I bring them all together. I use esoteric astrology still. I use modern astrology still. I even bring in a little evolutionary astrology here and there, but my focus is ancient astrology. So that's how I will tend to read. So if the moon is within 10 to 12 degrees of the north node, remember, she's ascending towards celestial north. Remember the picture we had? Where's my picture? Oh, excuse me. That's my Bernie Sanders voice. The great state of Vermont. Oh, here's my picture. You made me transition to whole sign. Well, a lovely young lady made me transition to whole sign. So, a lovely young lady with Scorpio Venus conjunct Pluto. Gosh, my goodness. There's nothing lovelier than that. Even though it's a really difficult aspect for the native, It really is. So, well, anyway, you see here. If the moon is within 12 degrees, either way of the north node, then she's ascending, right, towards celestial north, which means she's increasing in her significations. That's why I mentioned this is a north node eclipse, right? I know, and you know what? Like, this young lady, she lives back in California, and it's been October, Libra to, what are we in now? We're in Taurus. So Libra to Taurus, so it's over 6 months. What kind of experiments? So a great experiment you can do to see if whole sign houses works for you is to watch when a planet ingresses into a new sign. Watch the significations of that house and if they are activated for you. So that's a good little experiment. I've done that quite a bit. So Venus is in my 5th house right now, but I'm not getting out very much because I'm like a mushroom. I keep myself in the dark and feed myself shit. So, oh goodness. Anyway, when the moon is increasing, right? When the moon is increasing, that means conjunct the north node and ascending, then she will be increasing in her significations. So it's more of a positive thing, right? Whereas if she's descending, meaning within 12 degrees either way of the south node, she will be decreasing in her significations. So you see how they're reading astronomical phenomena in symbolic ways. Excuse me. So the increasing of light here, or rather not so much light, but the ascending here towards celestial north, it can bring a quality of being exciting or dangerous, right? That's from Demetra George also. Whereas on the descending, there's a sense of surrender to the unknown. I say a sense of powerlessness or allowing, right? Just sort of giving up, like they say, surrender or acquiesce to your higher power when you're going through, recovery, NA or AA. AA was started while Saturn was in Pisces during the 1930s. So that's an important thing to know. And it gives you a clue to the significations of Saturn in Pisces, right? Facing hard truths after being in a fog, right? Coming out of a fog. So let's talk about the eclipse cycle really quick, and then we'll get to horoscopes, okay? And this is just really quick because this comes into play with your stuff. Well, you know what? We can get into horoscopes right now for each rising sign while we're doing it. So flowers chase the sunshine. No one knows that song. Smashing Pumpkins, Snail from Gish. Flowers chase the sunshine. Flowers chase the sunshine. Flowers. Aries. Aries. I'll put you back over here. Oh wait, no. The sun's in Aries still, duh. It's about to go into Taurus. Flowers. Save the hours. Okay. When you wake up, you're weak, throwing your own life away. Okay, so Jupiter, well, we still have Taurus, and why can't... No, we need to go backward. Backwards, not forward, and always twirling, twirling, twirling. We need to go backward. I don't know why I went forward. It's because I'm wackadoodle. So here we go. Aries rising. So for the Aries rising friends here, the nodal axis, well, it's still in Taurus, you see, but the eclipse axis here is going into the 1st and 7th house, particularly for the solar eclipses, because the next lunar eclipse will be in Scorpio. Excuse me, on Cinco de Mayo. But this particular eclipse in the 1st house, the interesting thing, when the eclipses go into your 1st and 7th house axis, this is what I consider the beginning, right? The beginning of the eclipse cycle for you, right? Now, this is going to be a whole lunar precession cycle, wackadoodle. Yeah, I know. I don't know when I came up with that word, but It was when I tried to start cussing less in front of my daughter, but I still have a problem. So, but anyway, the first seventh house axis, right? I always talk about it being an existential crisis for our Aries risings. Now, remember, this eclipse in particular is conjunct Jupiter, right? Well, let's talk about some little things about this. So, this eclipse is coming out of the whole, well, we'll get to this in a second. So, the first seventh house axis, which we see for Aries and Libra here, it's an existential crisis, especially for Aries in the first house. It's like, who am I? It's a whole different your relationship to yourself is challenged. Something happens, an event that shakes you up, right? That makes you question everything. Now, the opposite sign, the seventh house, is about the other, right? Our partners, usually marriages. So this often can come after a big breakup in a relationship. Or we can meet someone new following the first house eclipse sometimes, because our relationship to ourself changes how we relate to other people and consequently affects our relationships. On the other side, our relationships to other people sometimes affect how we see ourselves. You see? So this is why I call it the existential crisis, and it affects the way we relate to people too. Now the emphasis will be changed for the Libra rising, right? Because Aries will be in the seventh house, and that'll sort of indicate that eclipse cycle sort of starting here for that person. I shouldn't say eclipse cycle for this, because by eclipse cycle, we really mean the nodal precession, right? The 18.6 years is the total cycle. But what I'm talking about is this mini cycle of the nodes, right, or the eclipses occupying a certain sign. We just came from Taurus and Scorpio, and we're entering Aries and Libra, right, for these eclipses. Now, the we have the true node and the mean node, right? Because the mean node is sort of, it's more, it accounts for the variations. I won't go too much into that, but it accounts for the variations that happen between the movement of the south and north node. So you'll see, right, the node sort of ingress into a sign and then going back into another sign or whatever. The mean node just moves, right, counterclockwise. It's not doing these weird movements because the nodes are almost always retrograde, right? Because they're moving the opposite direction. Excuse me. The opposite direction of the Earth's orbit. So they're pretty much always retrograde, except for in real life, they do go back and forth and they appear to go direct a little bit. The mean node sort of adjusts for all that. But I use the true node. I use the true node because I'm true blue. I'm true. I'm true. Ba-ba-dee, ba-da-die, ba-ba-dee. I think that came out when I was in high school. I'm such a Saturn girl. I keep like going over the past, the past, the past. Let me tell you about I'm going to be one of those old Karens. And back in my day, out of a pigeon. I'm just making shit up here. Sorry. So anyway, it can lead to breakups, wanting to be single even, so you can focus on yourself or meeting someone new, right? Now, how about the second and seventh house axis here? What song did I say? Oh, I'm blue, baba dee, baba die. I don't know, it's sort of annoying, but it gets stuck in your head, and my daughter kind of likes it. So, because it's all these songs have been like all over TikTok. Like, I love Kate Bush. Running up that road, we're running up that hill, right? And that was all over TikTok for a bit because of Stranger Things, But Kate Bush here. Kate Bush, you must. That's stupid old me. Stupid me. Although I'm looking more and more feminine bit by bit. Kate Bush, Lily. Oh my gosh, you have to watch this. There's going to be a commercial.
What if you could do SEO?
No. What if you can't do? What if you can't? What if you can't do that? Okay. That's Lily, right? She was my mentor's mentor. She passed away a long time ago. This is the 80s.
You are under the spell of the red shoes.
So cool.
But you are not helpless. I'm scared.
She was also a
There is
mentor
no
to
need
Kate
for you
Bush.
to be scared. Can the spell be broken? Of course it can. You must sing back the symbols. The first one being your...
Here, I'll show the song's
You
good.
are going... So will help you. All things proceed.
Oh, here we go.
The whole
You have to hear this.
universe. Protect you. And
This is-
I also
This is called the
will help you.
Gayatri. It's one of the oldest prayers in the world.
O thou who givest sustenance to the universe, from whom all things proceed, to whom all things return, unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, hidden by a disk of golden light, that we may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet.
God, it's so good. It's called the Gayatri. Song's really good too. Where's the chorus? I don't know if you can even hear this. Oh, that's so funny. Like the old lady. This part is cool. Anyway, she goes through the watchtowers, right? She goes through the angels, the four guardian angels of the watchtowers, right? Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael. God, I can't even remember. Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael. God, you know them anyway. So Taurus, right? Taurus rising is going to have the eclipse in the 12th house and the 6th house axis, right? So this axis here, let me go through my little symbolism here and then we'll get to your horoscopes, okay? So we start with the first house, the first 7th house axis, which I explained. And then we move to the 12th. You really like the placebo cover of Running Up That Hill too. The song is called Lily. It's called Lily. It's really good. Michael, duh! Michael. Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael. Right? Right? Yeah. Now I sound like the Ninja Turtles. Gosh. Let me see. Let me just double check. The four angels. Archangels, that's what they were called. The archangels. The archangels. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. That's right. Okay. Doot, Uriel. Oh, hi, Anna or Anna. I'll get so used to saying Anna from Frozen. Love is an open door. I love Frozen. Let it go, let it go. Turn away and shut the door. Here I stand, got to talk about this. So the 12th and 6th house axis, we go from the existential crisis into the cocoon, right? It's sort of like seclusion. We can see mental health crises. We can see physical health crises, right? That are sort of manifestations of this identity crisis that we've been going through, right? And so we sort of have to remove ourselves from the drama of life in order to process and integrate all these changes. So the way I think about this eclipse cycle is sort of in terms of the moon phases. So I think of the 1st and 7th house axis here as sort of the new moon, right? The new moon of this eclipse cycle. Excuse me. And by eclipse cycle, I'm talking about the whole nodal precession, talking about the 18.6 years. And then we go to the 11th and 5th house axis. To me, this is sort of emerging into the light of day, right? So, I think of the 12th and 6th house axis as like the first quarter moon, right? This is where we really meet opposition. And so, we're going in. It's so funny because you think about this being more dark, perhaps, but, to me, this is more on the ascending cycle, right? The waxing cycle of this fictional, symbolic, giant moon that I'm visualizing here. So I think of the 12th and 6th as the first quarter, then the 11th and 5th as the gibbous moon. This is the optimistic phase where we're slowly breaking out of our cocoon into the light of day, right? It was in my 5th house eclipse that I came out as trans, right? I emerged out of the cocoon, so to speak. And then we go to the 10th and 4th house axis, which is like full maturity. This is where we manifest stuff. This is the full moon, to me, of the eclipse cycle, right? Where we have to bring something into being, right? So for me, I moved out of state. I'd never done that before. And I quit my job of 20 years to put all my eggs into this basket and see. Now, it wasn't just all about this. I was, moving to be with my daughter. But this was a good opportunity to see if I could get my business going. So anyway, that's when we get to the 11th and 5th and the 10th and 4th, right? Oh, I just said that. Now, you'll typically see big changes in terms of your life direction and either with regards to your parents, your genealogy, or your living situation, right? So this disrupts, this disrupts your life direction in some ways. It creates a new beginning in terms of the way people see you. You're making something new. And then we start going on the waning cycle. And I call the 9th and 3rd house axis, I call that like, I didn't write that down. I call that like the disseminating moon, or what you might call the waning gibbous. But in astrology, we call it the disseminating moon, like sort of by their more archaic or traditional names. And that is sort of more like reflection. It's very 9th and 3rd house. There's a lot of learning that goes on or teaching that goes on. A lot of times people go to school or stuff like that. But to me, it more has to do with the reflection on what you believe, what you've done. Because when we're visible, we're sort of hitting a high point, that full moon phase. And then we're descending to where we reflect upon that. How did it go? How did we do? What did we build? Right? And then we move from the 9th and 3rd house axis to the 8th and the 2nd, which is about material resources and death, which is why, to me, it's sort of the end of the cycle. Whereas in the 1st house, we're sort of born again, even though it's a crisis. But oftentimes, our material resources are challenged here. We've gone from the self, right, to the stuff, sort of, stuff and death. So this is a time where we might suffer big losses sometimes, like monetary losses. Or we could come in to money that we didn't expect, right? We could get promotions. We could start a small business. Our small business could do better or take off or something like that. Get a new job. Find a new source of income. Right? Have investments pay off. Or, right, have a big unforeseen expense that, like a medical expense you weren't expecting that totally screws you, So anyway, And now we'll look at each. Well, so this eclipse in particular, like we said, we've just come out of the whole Taurus thing. And Scorpio, right? Our last eclipse was Scorpio around, what was it, October 25th of last year? Around Halloween. And before that, we were in Gemini and Sag, right? This is a solar eclipse, like we talked about. And, the moon and the sun are doing fine in Aries. They're not ill-dignified. They're relatively conjunct Jupiter, which is auspicious. And they're conjunct the North Node, which amplifies, right, the moon's significations here. Which, to me, being somewhat conjunct Jupiter, that also amplifies the benefic qualities of this, which is why I've been saying it's a mostly benefic eclipse. That doesn't mean people will experience it all benefically, right? It's still going to be very difficult for lots of people. So, like Chris Brennan said, eclipses can bring the worst and the best in our lives. I don't want to scare anyone, and I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just mentioning that to be honest, right? Astrology is not all hunky-dory, and that's what I hate about modern astrology, is they try and make everything into a positive. Oh, it's all about growth. People say, well, nothing is bad from the angle of the soul. Sure, but if I slap you in the face, how does that fucking feel? Right? That to me is the explanation of benefic and malefic. Can you touch on nodal returns a little? Well, I did, but I'll mention it again. Nodal returns happen every 18.6 years. The second nodal, and now we're talking modern astrology here, because I assume you're talking about modern astrology, because we don't really talk about nodal returns in traditional astrology. Or I think even in Vedic. Vedic really sort of focuses on the nodes. And what I forgot to finish saying earlier, Alan Leo in the late 1800s, right? He was the granddaddy of modern astrology. And they sent him to India, right? Because that was the headquarters of the Theosophical Society. And that's where he was training Indian astrologers. And that's where modern astrology bled over into Vedic, and where Vedic bled over into modern. So they brought in all these Eastern ideas of karma and reincarnation and all that around the nodes. And so you see that sort of became the budding primogenitor for evolutionary astrology, which sort of treats the nodes in terms of the soul and evolution and personal and transpersonal and all these sorts of things. Some of it's quite interesting, and I did it for years. But anyway, having your nodal return, your second nodal return in modern astrology, is when they say you're starting to go in the direction of your North Node destiny, right? So I usually say like age 38, age 39, because 18.6 plus 18.6 is 37 point something, 37.12 or 2. I don't know. All I know is that usually I'd say age 38 is what I say to be safe. And it's like slowly coming out of your shell bit by bit, So, but it's read much differently in Vedic astrology. They're much more malefic. In Vedic astrology, right? Well, we already talked about that. Anyway, we don't need to rehash that. People can rewind and watch all that discussion. We don't need to repeat it for the people watching at home. Well, you're all watching at home or at work. So let's do eclipse horoscopes. But it's just interesting to note that it is a North Node eclipse, which means it's ascending in power, right? It's becoming more powerful. So for Aries and Libra, we'll look at these two, right? For Aries and Libra, right? For Aries, the eclipses just came out of, right, Taurus and Scorpio, so that's second and 8th house axis. Excuse me. Which means they just came out of that whole death finality cycle. There could have been difficulty with money. I imagine that since October, there was probably a significant loss or accumulation of debt or credit or something like that, where you had to use credit. So that's often a practical thing that happens with the 8th house eclipses. For Libra, it'd be the opposite. The Taurus eclipse would have been the 8th house, and that would have been around April, right? And the 2nd house eclipse in Scorpio for a Libra rising would have been more, well, it could have been, a lot of people were looking at that as a negative sort of eclipse. And I saw both ways with clients. It could have been an unexpected luck or windfall, right? Or unexpected debt getting whittled down, written down. I had a couple people go into bankruptcy, which actually was sort of positive for them. I've seen people actually have to deal with the death in the family or a close friend. That sort of precipitates this existential crisis, right? But you see how your stuff, right? The money stuff here is sort of highlighted or was highlighted before for our Aries rising friends. So especially since April, you know, maybe you did get a promotion. Maybe you did, or the opposite could have happened too. Maybe you had, maybe you actually lost money. Again, you think of expenses, big things like that. But in terms of small businesses, it can be a decline in business that you weren't really expecting. So you're coming out of the physical resources bit, and now you're going into yourself, you know? And then, you know, the next cycle goes into the 12th and the 3rd house. The 12th and the 6th house. 2021 would have been the Gemini-Sag axis, right? So this is you, Libra rising, lost your job, broke your leg, it's been rough. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Well, and the medical issues too can get expensive, is the thing. Yeah, but the great thing about this is that it's moving into your 1st and 7th houses. So you're going to have a wonderful little existential crisis, aren't you? So especially for Libra risings, when we get to around, what is it, October 15th? October 15th is when we have the solar eclipse in Libra. So that should initiate your existential crisis. And, well, I'm sure your leg might even be healed, but I bet it took you out of action for a little bit. Causes reflection. So, well, anyway. Oh, I was going to say, and then you're going to eventually go into the 12th and 6th house axis. We don't need to belabor that. So Taurus rising, you're coming out, right? Taurus and Scorpio, right? You're coming out of the existential crisis, yeah? And you're moving into the cocoon phase, right? So this is going to be a time of seclusion probably for a while, for the next year or so, a little over a year. I mean, think about, right? There's 12 signs, 18.6 years. So 12 divided by 18.6, or 18.6 divided by 12, right? So that's however long that the nodes stay in a sign. I should know this off the top of my head. Oh, wait, 18.6 divided by 12. So a year and a half. A year and a half they spend in each sign. So for the next year and a half, you're going to be in your cocoon phase. So this one in particular is going to feel probably a bit over the next 6 months, right? Because these effects unfold for the subsequent 6 months. It's going to feel again, right? Like you're removing yourself from action, activity, drama, stuff like that. So you're going to bring yourself, you're going to put yourself probably in a space to heal, because that's the thing about existential crises is they're not fun oftentimes. I mean, they can be, and they can yield wonderful insights, you know. However, it can be very difficult, right? Facing yourself in a new way and having a new relationship to yourself. So a lot of times that has to be internalized, which is why sometimes we get breakups during these phases. So maybe you did have a breakup for Taurus risings or relationship issues following that Halloween eclipse. I'll call it Halloween because it was within a few days. Scorpio rising, you're having the eclipse going into your 6th house here. So the focus will be probably around either physical injuries, illnesses, or even enemies, right? Someone who's been subverting you from behind the scenes may expose themselves, right? But you may even get bogged down with your own obligations and work and stuff like that, taking over little projects. Again, the focus is going off of all the big stuff and just secluding yourself, right? I keep saying taking yourself out of the ricketa-racketa, but I really mean seclusion, you know? He's gone into seclusion in the West Wing. Yes, you had surgery, still out of work for a while. I'm so sorry. You're suing the city? Good, I hope you win. Goodness gracious. Anyway, so let's go on to Gemini rising. Gemini. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. For Gemini rising, you just came out of that 12th and 6th house axis. You're emerging from your cocoon into the light of day in the 11th house, right? Which is all about people who help us. It's about our ideals, our goals, our hopes, our dreams, our wishes, what we hold dear, what we'd like to see in the world, right? It can be, I think of our 9th house as, political and religious values, but the 11th house is sort of like social values. The reason why we see groups there is because it also has to do with like-minded people, friends, people who help us, benefactors, like, patrons, fans, stuff like that. So this is going to be sort of interesting because you're coming out of that phase where it seems like everything is just sort of dry and drear and and like you're going through all this stuff, and then you get to sparkle a little bit. So this one's especially, I sort of like this for our Gemini risings, because I think it's going to give them an opportunity to connect with people again, which is what Gemini risings really want to do, isn't it? Now, for Sag risings, the opposite sign, this is going to be the 5th house, which is why I was joking with Sag risings, like, oh yeah, use protection, right? Because I'm sure some people will get pregnant. But that's a big way to read it. Scorpio rising, you've been a hermit, in hermit mode. Guess you'll stay in. Wait. Scorpio rising. Oh, that's your 12th house. Well, yeah, do whatever you got an impulse to do, Lizzie. You're not gonna be like, well, the astrology says I gotta stay inside, so I'm gonna stay inside. You don't want to do stuff like that. These are just, right, the most likely interpretations of these events. Your Sagittarius rising, I hope you have your tubes tied, Christina. Although I don't know what year you were born, so maybe you want children. Maybe you want to have children. But it doesn't just mean children. It's also about your fun and pleasure. You're coming out of the 6th house, which is no fun, right? It's all the shit that we don't want to do, that we have to do. Otherwise, we fall apart, which is another reason why we come out of this 1st and 7th house axis. Yeah, Jennifer. Thank you, Christina, for saying that. That's very sweet to say to Jennifer. Yeah, that's very sweet. So anyway, well, in Gemini risings, you got to watch out about spending money right now because Mars is in your 2nd house. So, 1981 and no. Oh, yeah, you're done with kids. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think I'm done. One and done. Although I'd love to meet someone with kids so my daughter could play with people or play with other kids. So that would be nice. Although, I don't want to introduce my daughter to anyone I'm not going to be with for a long time. Because last relationship, I thought I was going to marry the person. I thought I was going to be with her forever. And then that didn't work out. And my daughter liked her, was kind of close to her. And we both liked her daughter and got close to her daughter, And so that's really weird when you break up and, like you get close to kids and, the kids get close to you or your kids get close to them and their kids. And it's just a really difficult thing. So anyway, yeah, Gemini risings. Oh, that's you, Christina. Yeah, be careful spending money for a little bit, my darling. And for our Sag risings, that's your 8th house. So you want to watch about spending money too, Sag rising. And don't put stuff on your credit card. You may have losses you incur that you weren't expecting. So, anywho, I was saying the 1st and 7th house go to the 12th and 6th, right? And we come out of the 6th house into the 5th to have fun. So my Sag risings, if you're not going to have kids, have some fun. That's a fear of yours too. Yeah. You have a 12-year-old in your... Yeah, mine's 9. So... Yeah, that's why I want to meet a couple. So they can just stay at their house and I can come over, Who's next? The Cancer Cap axis. So for Cancer Cap, this is going between the 4th and 10th house. So for Cancer, the 10th house, and for Cap, the 4th house. Oh, you're welcome, Christina. So for Cancer rising, this will be big beginnings and endings in terms of your career or life direction. So you could all of a sudden get very dissatisfied with your job and like, this is not what I want to do. This is not what I was intending to do. I'm going to do what Frankie did and try and start a small business and see if this even works, which I don't know. We'll see if this works because it's been 6 months. It's been 6 months. It's been 6 months. That's my Christopher Walken impression. I can't really do one. You're talking to my man all wrong here. I got a fever, and the only cure is more cowbell. I can't do it. Thank you, Christina. I was sitting here painting and heard Frankie. Oh, yeah. Painting. Sorry. I was thinking of something dirty. I shouldn't. I'm always thinking of something dirty. It's the weirdest thing. When I first meet someone, the first things I think of are like, what do you look like when you're having sex? And what do you look like when you're taking a shit? I don't know. And I just imagine the faces. I don't do it voluntarily. It just happens. It just pops into my head, So, you tone. Ha. Anyway, so Cancer. You may do what I did and quit a long-term job or totally change gears. I was a systems analyst and I worked in higher education. And I was just like, oh my God. Yeah, painting is wonderful. So anyway, and then for the Cap rising, you could move, right? This whole axis is about manifesting things. This is about the full moon stage. This is bringing things into fruition. So that's why it's a big direction change, right? This is a big angle. And then we descend into our Pisces, Leo rising here. Leo rising. A Leo rising. Oh, wait, no, I don't want to go that forward. So, for Leo rising, we are putting the eclipse in the 9th and 3rd houses. So for our Leo risings, having the eclipse in the ninth house, like I said earlier, this is a bit more reflective, right? This is about what the last year was like, what it brought you to. Did anything, so your SO has an Aquarius rising, and asked him if he thought of those things. He said he imagined sex and me peeing. I was like, yeah, blame Saturn girl for me asking. I just do that. I don't expect anyone else to necessarily do it. I don't know. Like, maybe that's a Scorpio in the 10th house thing. Scorpio, midheaven. I don't know. But it just pops into my head. Yeah, and that's what I'm going to go towards more, is just having everyone call me Saturn girl eventually. I should change my URL for my website. It's just, it's better to be because I used my real name for everything. And then all of a sudden, something happened that made me question doing that. So I'm like, I got to start using more of a pseudonym. And Saturn girl seemed very fitting. Saturn girl. Saturn girl. And then I was like, why didn't I? Because I changed my legal name. And I should have put Saturn as my middle name. Or Saturnine. I thought Saturnine. Saturnine. Emperor Saturnine. Well, I'm an empress, but Empress Saturnine. So for Leo rising, we talked about the 9th, right? I mean, sometimes people do go back to school, Sometimes they do. There could be an educational thing, but usually it's when we start reflecting, we get a bit more spiritual, metaphysical, religious, or whatever, philosophical, right? You can be an atheist and get philosophical about existence, but that typically happens around this 9th house thing. For the opposite sign, Aquarius rising, this is the 3rd house, which is me and your so. You're so. So me and your so, the 3rd house it's about ideas. It's about tests, examinations. It's about learning. It's about writing, speaking, expressing something that you've learned, right? So for me, I think of the 3rd house as also content creation. I mean, we could see things that have to do with our siblings, right? But this is the reflective phase where we express what we have learned. And the 3rd house is more about expression. And the 9th house is more about reflection. Yeah. In the 9th house, we reflect. In the 3rd house, we express what we've reflected upon. You see? So us 3rd house people, for me, I'll probably be creating a lot of content. Although I got a goal recently that I want to achieve. I just don't want to tell anyone about it because then I won't do it. So, but there's a goal I want to do, and it's very 3rd house. So now let's move forward, shall we, to the final axis here. Virgo Pisces. So Virgo. Now, who was the person that didn't get their synastry read yesterday? Mine are 22 and 25, plus raised some God kids. God bless you, Heather. I can't imagine. 22 and 25. I mean, I hear that's when they get less rude or less mean to you, right? Because they hate you up until they're like 22 or 25. I guess anyway, we'll talk about this last one, which is the 8th and the 2nd house. So for Virgo rising, this is going to be the 8th house. I'd like to put a positive spin on it and say that you're going to bring closure, perhaps to a debt situation, or at least see some light at the end of the tunnel. So where either you come up with a payment plan, or you're paying off a credit card, or you take out a loan for a specific reason, or go into debt for a specific reason. Hopefully a beneficial one. I mean, it could be school, it could be a car you have to buy. I mean, for me, one time I had my catalytic converter cut out of my car, right? And then you have to buy a new one or whatever. unforeseen expense, but then you get a new car that you really like. What song? Love it. What's the song called? Oh wait, no, that was earlier. I gotta. Yes, 'tis mine, Virgo rising. Oh, and you're a Pisces rising 9 degrees. We're talking about you too. We're talking about you too, Pisces rising. It'll be your second house. So hopefully if you have a small business, hopefully your business starts to increase a little bit. You have court in June. Ah, bless you. You got court in June. So, well, in terms of eighth house stuff, eighth house is also fears. So facing fears, things like that. But I expect this to be more of a good thing. Well, maybe you had to take out a loan for a lawyer. Oh, I probably shouldn't be showing my feet. Oh, it's just my leg. My feet are all nasty right now. I usually, like, for my other gig, right, doing adult content, I keep my feet, like, constantly moisturized and in socks so that they look really cute. You hope so. You need to make more money. Well, this might be sort of an indicator of that, right? Because this is a North Node eclipse indicating increase, right? And then Jupiter's there. So I'm tending to read. Now, don't sue me if you don't get some luck, but I mean, do you have it? What's your. You either have a job or you're self employed. If you have a job, you could see. You could see a reduction in expenses in some way, or you could see an increase in pay in some way, right? But typically more efficiency, right? The second house is not just our money, but it's our livelihood too, how we make money, which is our jobs. So it is unemployment from 2020 and your cheap ass boss yeah, I applied for unemployment insurance and I haven't heard back. I gotta call them. It's been 6 months. It's been like 6 months. No, November is when I applied. November. October or November. Anyway, that's so wackadoodle. Wait, why did my camera... The... Did I touch the wire? Psh, I hate this stuff sometimes. I have no clue about audio-visual stuff. I don't know. I'm winging all this. I watch a lot of YouTubers, so I'm like trying to emulate them. But they're all news. Like, it's all news YouTubers I watch, and politics. I watch LeftTube, or what's called BreadTube. It's all a bunch of socialists, essentially. It was in 2021 last time you received. Okay. You have a side art business. Okay, so maybe that's where you'll see an increase. Maybe that's where you'll see an increase. It was last time you received in January. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Virgo rising here, you have a good job and you interviewed for better money position in the same company. Hoping to hear this week. Right? But you're also for Virgo rising, this is the eighth house. So just watch out. There could be stuff to do with taxes. Taxes also. Could be tax refunds, because this is typically other people's money. So you'll see taxes, tax refunds, debt consolidation, bankruptcy, things to do with debt, but also sometimes death. Or if it's a benefic thing like this, there could be a slight gain from someone else's death, like an inheritance or something like that. But you're self-employed, got into digital design. Yeah, wishing Ashlyn the best. Me too. Me too. You're self-employed. Yeah, I mean, that's a hard gig, isn't it, being self-employed? And got into digital design. So, well, eighth house. Clientele, perhaps. Perhaps clientele, again, other people's money. So, that could be a place where things happen. But the eighth house is also psychological, like fears and drama, or fears and trauma and stuff like that. So oftentimes we do start to process memories from the past that we've been avoiding. So we'll look at a couple people's specific charts. Who had a chart up? But I hope it makes sense now when it comes to eclipses. I didn't think that I was going to have enough information to talk about with the eclipses, because I only had 3 pages of notes and I usually have like 5. But I talk so much. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Well, I have stuff to say. So let's see where someone's birth info is. Lizzie the Leslie. We've got Lizzie the Leslie. Let's see, because we've done Lizzie before. Let's see if there's someone else we haven't done. Lola. Is Lola Calderon? Lola Calderon still here? Lola Calderon. Heard. Thank you, Saturn girl. You have BPD and girl. They've been in there since my Saturn return went exact in 20. Yeah, I was first diagnosed with BPD. And then I was downgraded to bipolar too. But I still have lots of BPD features. And the DBT workbook stuff was actually pretty helpful for me. The behavioral stuff. Dialectical behavioral therapy. Right? It's good stuff. Okay, we'll do... I don't recognize... Who don't I recognize? Whose chart haven't I done? Whose chart haven't I done? I'll do one of these people down here. Coda, the wild tuber. The wild tuber. Coda. Coda. Hopefully Coda's still here. Is Coda still here? Hello, Coda. Are you here? Coda, are you here? Coda, are you here? Ooh, what sounds interesting? What sounds interesting? I want to know. I want to know. 12:55 p.m. Oh, a.m. Well, at least I did horoscopes for all the rising signs, though, too. I mean, basic ones, but still, I think that's useful for people. I'll probably have to set up chapters in this stuff. Which means I'll have to watch this for 2 goddamn hours. Which means I'll want... Oh, Rock Island. Rock Island. Illinois. So Coda, my darling, you're the Virgo rising. So we're putting the eclipse there in your... Let's do a little bi-wheel. Let's do a little bi-wheel. Because this is fun. It's fun for you to see the bi-wheel. I don't do this for myself because I just think about it, but it's helpful for you to see. So here's the eclipse here in your 8th house, right? Which we talked about the losses, all that sort of stuff. But like I said, I think this is going to be more beneficial. So hopefully you either see tax refunds coming through here, right? Or you see you see your tax expense or something decrease, right? You save some money, perhaps. You're able to save. Excuse me, or it could be more psychological. In facing difficult memories and feelings and things like that. Our fears, facing our fears. Fears are in the 8th house. So Jupiter will be going through your 9th house, though, pretty quick here in May, which is lovely for spiritual stuff and your philosophical outlook, your worldview, political affiliations or ideas, right? We start to get challenged on what we believe, but in a good way, right? Jupiter can very literally be a teacher or someone you learn from in your life, you know, or a YouTuber, right? But there's that element of teaching with both Jupiter and with Taurus, right? Taurus is acquisitive, not just for things, but also knowledge, right? Taurus oftentimes has a really good memory, doesn't it? Especially Taurus Mercury, although I've really damaged my brain quite a bit over the years, you know? I mean, gosh. I mixed more, you know, substances than God knows, you know, mixing it all like cocktails. Hippie flipping, right? Hippie flipping, or what's the other one? Candy flipping. All that fun stuff. And mixing in all sorts of other things. All sorts of other letters. Letters. It's all a bunch of letters, isn't it? I don't know why that's funny to me. HIJKLMNOP. E. I'm going to take some Q. Anyway. Excuse me. Saturn is conjunct your Mars. That's no fun. Saturn is square my Mars, which is no fun either. So, you know, it's like all of a sudden having to stop. It's really frustrating. Like everything is running up that road. We're running up that hill, right? Everything is going uphill. It's like, oh, it's dragging along. For Mars, it's even more painful because Mars wants to do shit and he can't, right? So it feels like your hands are tied. It feels like things are going slow, you know? Now, when Mars is conjoining Saturn by transit, that's a lot more fun because it gets Saturn up off its butt. But this slows Mars down quite a bit, and especially being in Pisces too. So anyway, let's go on to someone else. Let's go on to someone else. Someone else. Someone else. Someone else. Who else? Excuse me, that wasn't very polite or professional. Ooh. I got mosquito bites in my shirt. I wonder if I'm allowed to say that. Your therapy, DBT or whatever. Okay. Well, who's next? There's Ashlyn. There's Coda. There's Ashlyn. There's Coda. Here's Heather. Heather. Oh, you were born in an eclipse. Well, let's look at yours, Jennifer, and then we'll get Heather after. We'll get Heather after. Jennifer. Jennifer near and far. I would not have them here or there. I would not have them anywhere. I will not eat green eggs and ham. I will not eat them, Sam I am. Would you? Could you? In a house? Would you eat them with a mouse? I would not, could not with a mouse. I will not in a house. Oh, I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam I am. "5:37 p.m. Syracuse. 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 Oh, now we got a Libra rising. So that puts it in your 7th house, which we already talked about being about. Now you're probably going to have big beginnings in terms of relationships. It could be a breakup, or it could be meeting someone new. But whatever the event happens over the next 6 months, it's going to precipitate that sense of existential crisis and make you start questioning yourself and all that fun stuff. So just watch out. I mean, it's a very exciting time in many ways. It can be sort of difficult. And it can strain relationships. But I sort of see this as a nicer thing for you because, again, Jupiter, you know? So, uh, well, and Jupiter's moving into your 8th house. So your financial situation could improve a little bit, right? It could get a little lucky. So that's good. Excuse me, your natal Mars is in Cancer. Your natal Mars is in Cancer. So this is your Mars return. Just watch out getting in fights with bosses. You know, watch out. Watch out doing stuff in public that you wouldn't want to be known for, like getting a bad reputation, perhaps. Um, if you wouldn't want to read about yourself doing it on the front page of the newspaper, or we don't even have newspapers anymore, but you know, if you don't want it to be a big story on YouTube, don't do it. Don't do it. You probably still will, but try not to. Try not to play along. So, oh, excited to hear about your chart, having been born under an eclipse. Oh yeah, so there's the eclipse. Where's the node? So here's the north node. So it was a south node eclipse. The nodes were at 5 degrees. So that's an eclipse. Yeah. That's an eclipse. Well, I mean, it's like 12 degrees away, 12-ish degrees away. So I guess that was still a partial eclipse. Yeah, that was a partial eclipse. So now it's difficult oftentimes being born under an eclipse because there's like this added sense of destiny and all that. I mean, we all have a sense of destiny because we're all a little narcissistic, but there's a sense of participating somehow in other people's destinies as well, right? I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily collective, but more than just yourself, you know. It's sort of a more broad application here. But it's in your 7th house, so you're probably a bit codependent, or at least were. So something else you just have to watch out for. Thank you for this reading, Frankie. You're welcome. You're welcome, sweetheart. Thank you for showing up. But anyway, so you're probably a little bit codependent, you know. Oh, this eclipse will be, you know, for all intents and purposes, co-present in the same sign with your eclipse. And you could even say conjunct. You know, I mean, it's 12 degrees away or whatever, but still, it's interesting. So this eclipse is very interesting for you. And you're going to have that existential crisis coming up in October. So I would be wondering if you would have a breakup here because of the other 7th house stuff. And being that you might be a little bit codependent, right? Or very used to focusing on other people at least, right? Where's Saturn? Saturn's retrograde and in Leo. So yeah, you probably suck at boundaries. You're probably used to being a little bit of a loner, right? Or at least, you know, you don't trust people probably. Oh, you're welcome, Anna. You probably don't trust people very much. I mean, when you were a kid, you were probably like, you felt left out. People made fun of you or bullied you. I always say this line, but it's like being the last kid picked for dodgeball, right? And oftentimes it's a sense of hopelessness too. So, Jennifer Farr, probably, but I moved away from everyone you know in 2021 across the country to a town you've never been. Oh, in reference to codependence. So instead, you sort of are a loner, which is very Saturn in the 11th house. Unhappy Saturn in the 11th house. You have a lot of unhappy planets. I mean, well, you got a couple happy ones too, but Saturn's unhappy, Mars is unhappy, and Jupiter's unhappy. Venus is happy. And is that it? Oh, the sun is exalted. The sun is happy. You haven't been in a relationship for 3 years. Well, you could meet someone new then, over the next 6 months. Don't quote me. I mean, at the very least, you might have a strong desire to meet someone new. But that could very possibly happen over the next 6 months. Yep, hated Jim Lowell being last, yeah. That's definitely that experience. So, Jupiter going into your 8th house, we already talked about that, what that looks like. We talked about Mars in the 10th house, so we'll move on to someone else. But yeah, yes, my darling. You're going to piss people off too, just with your presence. So, with Pluto in the 1st house, And it looks like you did not have a good relationship with Dad, probably. You did not have a good relationship with Daddy-o. Daddy-o. Okay, Heather. Heather's from Louisville. More shootings. There was a Louisville shooting, and there were 2 Alabama shootings. Wait, no. There were 2 Louisville, or there were either 2 Louisville or 2 Alabama. And these insane people just want to go after trans people. Who are the biggest, the most frequent shooters? It's cis, straight men. It's straight, cis men. Trans people have done like 2. And even still, anyway, it's just so disgusting. Heather. But my state, Colorado, our governor, Jared Polis, he just signed 3 laws, 3 bills, or 3 bills into law. Yeah, 3 bills into law. Ooh, Heather's a Gemini, 74. 3 bills into law that protect abortion rights and gender-affirming care. So, because Marjorie Asshole Green she's introduced this bill called the Protect Child Innocence Act. And all it does is ban gender-affirming care for youth and then restricts it even more for adults. Leave us the F alone. They're always talking about freedom, and yet they want nothing but freedom for themselves and slavery for other people. It's really disgusting. It's really disgusting. Basically, the Republican Party is becoming the party of evil. I mean, the Democratic Party's not great, don't get me wrong, but they don't want to unlive me like the other party does. And there are actual big voices on that side calling for eradication. So, excuse me if that doesn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So, Heather, another Virgo rising. Well, Jesus, we just talked about Virgo rising, Heather. Heather. Heathers. I should call you Heathers. That's one of my favorite movies with Winona Ryder and Christian Slater. I thought Christian Slater was so hot and so cool when I was a kid. When I was trying to be a dude or whatever. I'm like, I want to be like Christian Slater, because he just seemed so cool. He just seemed so cool. Didn't he? Didn't he just seem so cool? And Corey Feldman, I used to like him too when I was a kid. Corey Feldman. He was so cool. It's just all the horrible stuff that happened to him, apparently. But he said Michael Jackson never did any of that stuff, So I don't know. But Corey Feldman was super cool. If anyone ever saw Monster Squad or The Goonies, Monster Squad. No one's seen Monster Squad. Well, look at this. You were born approaching an eclipse. Heather, you have a waning moon. I guess it's a disseminating moon approaching a last quarter. So you're more in the reflective stage. You're probably more of an introvert. Right. Ooh, exalted Jupiter in the 7th house. It's not exalted. Jupiter in his home in Pisces in the 7th house. That's quite auspicious for relationships. So maybe you've been married to someone. I don't know. I mean, for a long time, right? Excuse me. Well, we talked about what the eclipses mean for Virgo rising, 8th house. Oh, God, I have a hiatal hernia. I always say that, but it's true. Jupiter going through the 9th house. We talked about that. Let's move on to someone else, because... Oh, you're going to have your Mars return in May, right? Mars is going to enter Leo, I think, at the end of May. So we'll watch out for that, because Mars going through our 12th house can make us really agitated. It can make us feel like we want to jump out of our own skin sometimes, you know? It's just really frustrating, because it's like we want to act and we can't. It's sort of restricting. Confining. That's the thing, confinement. It feels confining. So just watch out for that. Anyway. Oh, the Venus is going to go into your 12th house too. And in June. And be there for 4 months. So that could be a time to work on mental health. Or see a doctor. Or... you know, things could happen in terms of your medication, stuff like that. If you have, I don't know, things like treatment and stuff like that. Anyway, let's go on to someone else. It's so funny because Saturn's also going through your 7th house too. So it's like a time when relationships get strained. So maybe you are married to someone and things are just getting strained. Slater and Feldman are still cool. Yeah, they still are cool. Yeah. Ashlyn, whoa, really? You can't stand Star Wars. Yeah, I'm sort of like that too. Ugh, my mom is calling. We just call her Nana because my daughter calls her Nana. So, you know, we all call her Nana. Let's go on to someone else's. But relationships could get strained, mostly because you're probably a bit more independent now. You know? You probably used to be more codependent, and now you're a bit more independent, and it's sort of, you know, it can be uncomfortable for people. Ooh, you have an unhappy Saturn. What happened with childbirth? Or what happened with children? Can you tell me? I just want to know. You don't have to tell me, but... what happened with your children? Or did you not have children? Can you not have children? Anyway, we'll go on to someone else. But yeah, Slater and Feldman are still cool. You're married 25 years, but you haven't been together since 2007. He's your roommate and ex-fiance of 12 years. If I had a roommate, and my boyfriend long distance is 4 years. You care for everyone's kids. Okay. Okay. You had 2 but raised 6 others. So I imagine that was quite difficult. I imagine, because Saturn is unhappy. Saturn is unhappy. Okay, we'll do Anna. Anna. Love is an open door. Fixer-upper. Am I a fixer-upper? I don't know. Or am I a manic pixie? Manic pixie dream girl. I mean, probably for some people. On on the cam site, I do, through. All the guys think I'm beautiful. And they all think I'm like not even 30. A bunch of them said I was like 27, 28. I'm like, oh my God. Oh. And it's such a confidence builder when they say, you're beautiful. And even when they tell you to do nasty stuff, it's still sort of like, really? They want to see me do that? Okay. And you don't have to twist my arm. Anna. 1991. My dad was in Desert Storm in 1991 in Iraq. That was a pointless war. It wasn't even a war. It was George H.W. Bush just distracting from things. I will never apologize for the United States of America. I don't care what the facts are. He said that. That's an actual quote. I will never apologize for the United States of America. I don't care what the facts are. Not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent. 1,000 points of light. He was not even Texan. He's from, Maine. He was an oil person. Lexington, Kentucky. Kentucky. At Heather Renee, wow, you are a wonderful person. Oh, I'm so glad everyone's so sweet to each other in here. I'm so glad everyone's so sweet. That makes me happy. It really does. So Anna. My impressions? Which impressions? Who did I do? I can't remember. Well, Gemini's. I used to get in trouble as a kid all the time for making, doing impressions of. Your dad tried to rejoin for Desert Storm, but was 1 year too old. Yeah, my dad was a colonel. How old was he? Was 45 when I was born, so he was old too. Excuse me. But he used to train people on. Sort of a bigwig, But he used to train people on shooting and stuff. Anyway, so we have another Virgo rising. What's with all you Virgo risings? Like, we don't even have to talk about it. Oh, you had your Saturn return not too long ago. So that must have been quite interesting for you. When we go through Saturn in the 6th house stuff, it's sort of like we have to pick up all the pieces from the last cycle, from the last 3 years, right? Or 2.5 or whatever it is. It's sort of like, we learn responsibility, but it's like we have to pick up all the pieces. We have to do all the shit we don't want to do. During the 5th house Saturn stuff, life gets really uncertain, right? And things are everything is stress oftentimes. Oh, all of them. George Bush. Not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent. 1,000 points of light. That's more Dana Carvey doing George H.W. Bush. What? George W. Bush. You're either with us or you're against. If you're not with us, you're with the terrorists. Right? It's in my gut. I feel it in my gut. Well, nice to meet you there, sir. And that Texas accent, like, come on, dude. Clearing so much breath. We're gonna get those terrorists. Now watch this drive. If anyone ever saw Fahrenheit 9/11. Excuse me. Fahrenheit 9/11. Now watch this drive. Well, the clip was everywhere, right? We're gonna get those terrorists. Now watch this drive. Anyway, sorry. I don't know why I thought that was so funny. It's just sort of ironic. And all that stuff, the Iraq War, basically everything for the past 40 years has terminated right now. And you can see how it was the logical progression of everything. Starting with Newt Gingrich in the 1980s with the conservative revolution going till now. So anyway, but that's a whole nother thing. We can see that in astrological cycles as well. That's another thing for right? No good feelings for GW. Well, I mean, he invaded 2 countries and was responsible for over 1 million deaths by some estimates. So, yeah, not good karma. Not good karma. And then people say he's the nicest man they've ever met. Like when he's talking to you, he's just with you. And that's the charisma, right? That's the charisma. Sociopaths have that, you know. So, yeah. Now watch this drive. So anyway, but Saturn goes from the 6th house where we learn responsibility and become more independent to the 7th house where our relationships get strained, partially because we've become more independent. And then all of a sudden we feel like our partner's a roommate, right? Like this other person, who did we do? Heather, like Heather was just saying, right? Sorry, my brain, you know. So, but we already talked about the eclipse for you. We already talked about Venus for other Virgo risings. We talked about Mars. And you're having your Mars return to... Why? We've had 3 Cancer Marses and 4 Virgo risings. Hi, Saturn. Oh, hi, Neptune girl. How are you? Hello. I'm glad you're here. Let's look at someone else's chart. Let's look at someone else's chart. Well, and sorry, Neptune girl, you got here kind of late, but you can go back and watch all of our stuff about the eclipse and eclipses in general. We look at a lot of great stuff about eclipses. So. Oh, and let me show you this website. It's, dateandtime.com. But, just type in eclipse 2021, for example, because I was looking up these, timeanddate.com. And it shows you these eclipses. So we can see, right? This was the solar eclipse in Gemini. This is when I came out as trans, right around here. So quite interesting. That was in my 5th house. And then we had the one in Sagittarius, right? Solar eclipse in December of that year. So quite interesting, right? Coming out of our cocoon. I was dressing so wacky at that time. Like I was wearing pink skirts and like wackadoodle tops and like pink lipstick and shit. When trans women first come out, they're so awkward. And we are so cringe. Like when we first come out, because we don't know what we're doing. Like the young people who come out while they're in high school, even though they're being assaulted right now by the GOP. I'm so jealous. It's like, anyway, I got to have my daughter, which was the best thing that ever happened to me. So, or she is the best thing that ever happened to me. Everyone says that about their, yeah. Bit defense. So I got to figure out how to not let these windows pop up. I got to turn off notifications. So anyway, that's dateandtime.com. I just thought you should see that. Who else's chart do we have? Who else's chart do we have? Who else's chart do we have? This space station is fully operational. For whoever hated Star Wars. I can't stand Star Wars either, but it's just because my little brother loved it so much, and I totally got sick of it. I got so sick of it. And then episode 1, it was just so stupid. And so I didn't bother seeing any of the remakes after episode 1. Because I think by that time was I in high school when episode 1 came out? I can't remember. I think I was in high school or middle school. I think I was in high school or middle school. Where is someone else's chart? Where is someone else's chart? We did Coda, the Conqueror, or whatever your name is. We just did Anna. We did Elsa. We did Jennifer. Your oldest is trans, but that's your tough cookie. Well, thank goodness that they have such a wonderful mother. Because my mom freaked out. And I was 37 years old, or 38 years old, I guess. I'm so sorry. So whose chart is up? I got room for one more. Room for one more. Room for one more. Room for one more. Maybe I'll just bring up Ashlyn. Wait, where's Clara? Did Clara put her stuff down? Clara Barton? Clara Barton? Did you put your stuff down, Clara? Make more money. Yeah, we all do. We all do. Well, not all of us. Some people out there really don't. But most of us do. Well, no one else's chart? Want to do a Leo? I mean, it depends on your definition of do. My 7th house is Leo, so I've done lots of Leos. Leos and Sages mostly have been most of the people I've dated. Mostly women, Sag and Leo women. When it comes to, men, I like more like Twinkie. I like to be in charge. I'm mostly dominant. Although the right kind of mama, I tell you, the right kind of mama. So we're doing Neptune. Neptune, Sailor Neptune, if that's a thing. Sailor Neptune. Oh, 67, perfect. You're my sister's age. Well, she's 1965, but close. 67. 67, 1:08 a.m. Valdosta, Georgia. Georgia. I think of Georgia, I think of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Or the Lost City of Atlanta. Oh, gosh. I just realized. I shouldn't say it. It's gross. It's gross. It's gross. But I just realized I got to throw that away. My daughter threw up in the trash can right here. And she had to stay home sick from school. And I've got to toss it out. She went back to her mom's like 2 minutes before I jumped on here. So I was not ready. I was late, So anyway. Georgia. Valdosta. Did I spell that correctly? Oh, yeah, I worked. So Lady Neptune here. Sailor Neptune. Oh, 12th house moon. So you probably deal with depression or mental illness. Ruled by Saturn in Aries, where he's in fall, in the 2nd house. So you probably grew up quite poor, or at least with a sense of lack. Like mom and dad probably told you there's not enough to go around, But this eclipse will be in your 2nd house. So maybe this will be good financially for you, because it's conjunct Jupiter. So maybe you'll see some unexpected money come out for this Pisces rising. Chiron conjunct the ascendant, right? Life is pain. You know about that. Life is pain. Anyone else who says differently is selling something. That's Princess Bride. One of my favorite movies. I have like 100 favorite movies. You could tell I was raised on television and movies. So the eclipse, I just said your 2nd house. It's going to oscillate between your 2nd and 8th house, right? So, with Mars and Libra in your 8th house, you've probably accumulated debt. You've probably accumulated some debt. Or at least you're not. I just have a sense you're not very good with money. Not very good with money. You see, Aries rules your 2nd house and is not happy in Libra. I mean, I bet you could be a bit passive aggressive too, but, money's probably not good. What happened with your children? Did any of them have mental illness? Did any of your children have mental illness, difficulties, stuff like that? I would just like to know if that was a thing. or maybe addiction issues. Maybe a child was an addict. I hate to be so nosy, but I wonder if you had anything to do with the medical profession or with veterinarians or animals or something. Or if you were in the service industry, chef, restaurant, cook, server, dishwasher, line cook, or all the above. When you work in a restaurant, they make you do everything, don't they? Or hospitality in some way, but usually the service industry. Anyway, the eclipses, we talked about that. Saturn's going through your first house. So you are having your second Saturn return. Wait, no, sorry. Where the... No, you're going to have your second Saturn return in 2026. 2026. I think he'll dip in there in 2025. But 2026 is your second Saturn return. Well, Saturn is going through your first house, though. I just got through this, right? I've been saying the word existential crisis all night, but it is. It's sort of similar to the first house eclipse, right? So it's a reckoning where we get challenged on how we view ourselves, our relationship to ourselves. Oh my God, I really hurt my toe. It's like a black spot on it where I bruised it. Because when you're going around the corner and you kick something, it was like that. I was like, ah, And I screamed because it was my little toe. And my daughter's like, what happened? And I'm like, my toe. So anyway. But what happens when Saturn goes through our first house? We get sort of morose, right? We start to feel older, which, try not to fall into that trap. And we start to get a bit more, morbid. We start contemplating death and our own death. I was so stuck on death for the last 3 years. I couldn't think about anything but my own death. And I would even put myself in these ordeals where I'd imagine myself dying. And I'd sit there, I would go on walks out in nature, and I'd sit there, I'd find a place to sit where no one would see me, and I'd close my eyes and I'd put myself in that space as though I were dying, laying on a hospital bed or something, and I was laying there dying and facing that existential dread of the possible cessation of consciousness. That's terrifying. Anyone who says they're not afraid of death, I usually call bullshit on that, because the idea of consciousness ceasing is fucking terrifying. You've never known a time when you weren't here. The only thing you know for sure is that you are here. If all of a sudden you're not here, the world is gone. There's no sense of certainty. Although people make the argument, well, how would I even know, right? But in letting go your last breath, there could either be relief, knowing that you've done everything you could, to be as present as possible, to be as awake and conscious as possible, using as much inner fire as possible, or you could have your breath taken from you and you could experience that terror of not having any say or any control. At least when you give up your last breath, you are consciously acquiescing to whatever the situation is. Will you be comfortable on your deathbed taking other people's ideas about God or Jesus? Like Jesus will come to save you. Will you be cool with that idea? Jesus will save me. I won't. I get a lot from Jesus in the Gospels, but I'm not going to be comfortable on my deathbed taking other people's words for things. I need to understand for myself. And the only way, if the only thing you know for sure is that you are here, the only recourse you have to know yourself, let alone anyone else, but your source, the only way you have to know that is through your own sense of consciousness, your own sense of being here, being a self, being present, being an experiencer, whatever that means. Anyway, You could see that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I'm really passionate about, is consciousness. So anyway, but the reason I mentioned all that is because that's what you think about when Saturn is transiting your first house. I came out as trans while Saturn transited my first house, right? We have big changes in our appearance, you know, how we experience ourselves. You could see I'm very passionate about this Saturn in the first house because I just went through it, right? I mean, I've been through all of them because I'm over 28 years old, obviously, but some of them we remember more than others, don't we? Right? We don't remember our first house year, typically. We barely remember our second first house year, right? So, because we're 12 years old, you know? So anyway, it's all quite interesting stuff. Jupiter's going to go through your third house. So maybe your siblings, if you have any, will have some good luck. Or it could be a time where you're really productive in terms of writing or speaking projects. Could be a time where you train for a new position, train for a new job, right? Take a professional certificate, go back to some sort of schooling of some sort. The eclipses would have been here back in April of last year. So think back to April of last year and what happened in terms of speaking, writing, or educational projects, or things surrounding your siblings, because that'll give you a clue or a hint. So, who doesn't want to do a Leo? Oh, I've done my fair share of Leos, honey. I've done my fair share of Leos. You feel you have Saturn in the first house, but yeah, different house system. You feel you have Saturn in the first house. Well, I do whole sign houses. And you probably got quite used to Placidus. Placidus, to me, is ridiculous. I mean, the reason anyone would use a quadrant house system would be to divide the sky into east and west in terms of the midheaven. Because what you do in Placidus is you start the first house at the ascendant degree, and of course the seventh house too, right, of the opposite degree of the opposite sign, same degree of the opposite sign. You start the 10th house at the midheaven degree, and you start the 4th house at the IC degree, right? So, so you divide the chart into east and west and north and south. So east is over here, west is over here, north is on the bottom, invisible, and south is on the top, visible, right? So there's reasons why you do that for specific techniques. Like, you know, I would look at a planet's angularity, right? I would do this to see how powerful a planet is in terms of its angularity, right? So if a planet was within, so like Neptune here, right? I wouldn't do this with the outer planets because outer planets don't have dignity, right? Because I don't do that. I don't treat the outer planets as rulers of anything. As far as my practice is concerned, Uranus doesn't rule Aries, or Uranus doesn't rule Aquarius, Saturn does. Neptune doesn't rule Pisces, Jupiter does. I use the traditional rulerships. And Pluto does not rule Scorpio, Mars does. So that's a big difference in my practice, but we would still consider Neptune to be more powerful perhaps because he's more angular, meaning he's closer to the midheaven degree than the other planets are. The moon is somewhat angular, right? Because of the proximity to the first house, right? Or I guess you could say Saturn would be more angular, right? Saturn would be more angular because of the proximity to the ascendant. And that's why you would see Saturn being in your first house, which is all about codependency, right? So Saturn in the first house is very codependent. It looks for its value through other people. So, but you probably have other indicators of that too. Like, look, the ruler of your seventh house is Mercury in Cancer. Right, having the seventh house ruler in Cancer. Oh, and Mercury's stationing direct here. So that means you had just had, wait, hold on. Did you just have days? No. Mercury was just about to go retrograde. So your progressed Mercury went retrograde right away. Progressed Mercury went retrograde right away. So, well, you're probably quite passive aggressive too. Let's do another person. I've gone 3 hours tonight. I told myself I wasn't going to do 3 hours. I wasn't going to do 3 hours. What house system do I use? Whole sign. That's the only house system I use, darling. I did Placidus and equal houses for 15 years. I mean, I don't use quadrant house systems unless I do stuff for specific reasons. So yeah, whole sign houses, you can watch my video on house systems. I explain all of it and why and where they all came from, right? Whole sign houses was the original house system. Although we have evidence of porphyry, which is a quadrant house system going back at least to the same time. First century or second century? Second century CE. So, depression, yeah. Your son has anger issues. Yeah. Yeah. Both your children are 12th house moons too. That's difficult. You use Placidus or porphyry, which places your Mars in the 7th house. Yeah, well, bear with, take a look at whole sign houses. See what whole sign houses can do for you. When I started whole sign houses 4 or 5 years ago, once I worked with it, I never looked back. It just works better. It just is better. Now, the other thing about quadrant house systems is you have this stupidness called intercepted houses or intercepted signs. And I say it's stupidness because it eliminates house rulers. If you have, my dear Neptune, if you have an intercepted first house or Pisces intercepted, people aren't going to read that as Jupiter ruling your first house, when Jupiter very much does rule your first house, right? So, and that's the thing. You won't see those house rulers the same way. If they get swallowed, you have houses swallowing signs and signs swallowing houses. People don't like when I sit like this, but I mean, quite honestly, F them. I have ADHD, obviously, and I have to keep doing things. So, I'll show you another good game that I know. When your first house ruler is in the 6th house, that can be quite difficult. You don't see, right? You don't see these issues that you have. Like you don't see if people don't like you or you have enemies, perhaps, or you wouldn't see a lot of the health issues you perhaps have. It's the things that we miss about ourselves. Well, that's more of a 6th house sun. But 6th house first ruler too, The other thing about having a 6th house first house ruler, like Marilyn Manson has this. You'll see it with a couple different types of people. You'll see it with people who are used to being the villain, and you'll see it with people who are used to facing incredible odds, who are used to fighting for what they have. So, with Jupiter there, I need to do someone else's. You got to hop off of here. Yeah, I got to hop off of here soon too. If there's no one else, then... Oh, Stephanie Davis. That's the last person. Stephanie Davis. When I worked in food distribution and food stuff, there was a woman I had to deal with at a certain company who had your name. I won't say what company, because then that would reveal who she is. And she probably doesn't want to be revealed because she's a slanger of chicken nuggets. She is the queen of chicken nuggies. The queen of chicken nuggies. Huntington Bear. It makes me think of Paddington Bear. Wait, wasn't there someone from New York? Something from New York. Someone from New York wanted chart red. Where is she right now? I can't find her. Maybe she's gone. Thought I saw New York. Queen of Chicken Nuggies. Why don't we have any new signs for rising? Slanging nugs. Yeah, slanging nuggies. Slanging dino nuggies. I know, slanging nugs. Well, now where I am, it's legal, so. Excuse me. Let's hear it for New York. But Placidus, actually, it was supposedly invented by an Italian monk named Placidus de Titus. And the story goes is that he was misreading Ptolemy's description of equal houses. Because Ptolemy's ancient Greek is really hard to read. He's very verbose and uses a lot of, high language and stuff like that, I think. Or I've never read Ptolemy, but that's what I've heard from people who have. I mean, I've never read Ptolemy in Greek. So that's what I mean. Wish it was here, but no, Texas blows. Yeah, they would probably eradicate me down in Texas. It's so funny because I know a bunch of trans people who live there, and it's just disgusting what's happening. Oh, Tyra, there you are. Do you know your birth time, Tyra? Do you have your actual birth time? June 30th, 76. My dear Tyra, just tell me if you know when you were born. Let's hear it for New York. Stephanie Davis is a Libra. Her rising is Libra. Let's hear it for Stephanie. Your moon looks like it's right there in Pisces in the 6th house. So first of all, well, you're another Pluto rising person, aren't you? When I say Pluto rising, it means Pluto was rising up over the ascendant, right, as you were born. You're in Austin, though. Yeah, it's a bit safer in Austin. It's also more expensive in Austin. So, let's hear it for Tyra. So the eclipse will be in your 7th house. You probably already heard that. So you probably heard about the 7th house significations, and you can go check that out again. I'll have to add chapters into this. But this will be an exciting time for you. This will be an exciting time. You moved here a couple years ago and liking it. Oh, excuse me. Your Saturn is not happy in the 10th house. It took you a long time to find your way. Late bloomer, or perhaps like, I don't know what I want to do, or I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Maybe your parents had expectations for you to fulfill and you didn't, and maybe you felt a bit guilty about it. I don't know. But you lived in Portland for 20 years. Oh. Anyway. Well, Saturn is going through your 6th house now, isn't he? So this is where you're picking up all the pieces of the last 3 years where you probably were suffering from quite a bit of uncertainty, maybe issues with children, maybe a sense like you can't have fun. Maybe there was celibacy for a while. But definitely a sense of uncertainty and dreariness, perhaps. Or with the uncertainty comes just like stress, And then when you get to the 6th house, it's like, okay, how are we going to handle this? It's all this shit you don't want to do that you've been avoiding. And then these 3 years are about being like a worker bee. I mean, you could very literally focus on your job situation. Your daily grind. Like we put our jobs there because we typically don't like doing our jobs. But it's also coworkers, enemies, animals. But typically when I see it going through the 6th house, it's having to pick up all the pieces, to be responsible. And the reward by the end is being independent, and being somewhat responsible. And that independence leading us into the 7th house often causes strains in our relationships. So you can see how all these things sort of lead into the next. I'm so sorry. I'm just like getting over being sick. So you got to bear with me. Well, we should go on to someone else's. And we've had Libra rising. So I talked about Jupiter going into your 8th house already. Who does Venus rule for you? Your money situation's probably not good, or at least hasn't traditionally been good. You may have issues with debt. Venus rules the 8th house and is in the 12th. Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Any criminal activity? Any criminal activity? Addiction. Could be addiction. Could be addiction. Yeah, it's your 1st house ruler. So could be addiction. Let's go on to Tyra. Let's go on to Tyra. What's your birthday, Miss Tyra? Let's check it out for you. Where is Miss Tyra? Tyra, where the hell is your birthday? I've got to find it. Do, Tyra. Where are you, Tyra? I've got to find your birthday. I see your birth time, 7:09 Bronx, NY. What was the day? I think it was June. Where the hell's Tyra's birthday? I see your time, but I can't find your birth date. Where is it? Where is it, Tyra? Can you just tell me your birth time, Tyra? Or your birth date, sorry. You work for the government, no addiction issues, and financially stable. Good. Cool. Good for you. Last 3 years have been the most stable of your life. Good. That's good. Your parents were high school dropouts, bikers. Did they do any criminal stuff? Where's Saturn for you? In your 10th house. Oh, that's right. Life direction. Yeah, when Saturn is your 4th house ruler and unhappy, that's usually stuff to do with your parents. So, there you go, 6:30. Tyra. "7:09 p.m. Bronx, New York." Thank you, Christina. Thank you. So, thank you, Christina. You're very sweet. You're about to have your Jupiter return. That's pretty cool. So that'll be lucky. Your Sag rising. This is fun. You and I would be friends. Saturn's not happy in Leo. And Saturn rules your 2nd house. So I'd expect you to have not great money stuff too. Or if there was any good money stuff, it would happen later in life. I bet people always tell you their secrets. I bet people always tell you their secrets with that 8th house stuff. I'm a Cancer Venus too. Our Venuses are conjunct by 3 degrees. So you're very sweet. You probably get very attached to partners. Probably a bit romantic. We get devoted to people. Like I would be a total, promiscuous. I want to use the W word or the S word, and I don't know if I'll get in trouble for that. But I would totally be a total tart, to use a British word, or floozy, except for the fact that I have a Cancer Venus. And then I get feels. I get feelings for people. And then I want to do stuff for them. So, anyway, yeah. See, with ninth house Saturn, though, I have a ninth house Saturn. Yours is just very unhappy. Typically, we have a bad experience of religion growing up. Either our parents were super religious or, very fanatical about a certain ideal, or we went to religious school. Like I see a lot of Catholic school people with this placement. And what happens is we typically turn away from the religion of our parents and get involved in other stuff. Or we become atheist and just get very scientific and incredulous because we look at our parents' religion as a bunch of BS and mumbo jumbo. Oh yeah, people confess everything to you. Because the eighth house stuff, eighth house is things we hide from ourselves quite often, which is why there's fears in the eighth house. It was traditionally fear, also because it was descending. Now, you guys have to watch my other video on houses to understand what I'm talking about and where houses get their meanings. But the eighth house is what's called descending towards the seventh. It's a succedent house that's rising, towards the seventh, towards the angle. Whereas the sixth house is declining or falling away from the angle. Because we're talking about the motion of primary motion going from east to west over the course of a day, right? Not secondary motion where it's multiple days of something moving through the zodiac, counterclockwise, right? So that's just important to recognize here. But yeah, everyone tells the eighth house people their secrets. You'll see therapist types with that. So your 10th house ruler is Mercury and it's in the 7th house. So that's quite important. You have to go tuck your daughter in. Yeah, I'm going to get off in just a couple minutes, sweetheart. I have to eat. I wasn't going to do 3 hours, and now I've done 3 hours. I hate OneDrive. I hate Microsoft OneDrive. I hate OneDrive so much. Can't you turn off OneDrive? Ugh. You see, it syncs all my files, and I can't get rid of them. Oh, and then I run out of disk space. Anyway. Good night, Ashlyn. Yeah. So yeah, super religious parent. That's very typical. But then what we thirst after the rest of our lives is a sense of meaning. If anyone ever saw the movie Dogma by Kevin Smith, Jay and Silent Bob and all that stuff, the main character, she's atheist and she says, I remember being a little girl and you just have this sense of security that God's always up there, watching you. And that's sort of the feeling that we miss as we get older. Bye, Ashlyn. We love you. Mwah. And that's the sort of sense that we have. Like we want to recapture that sense of meaning and childlike wonder again. But we can't because we've seen too much, right? So we can't go back to that childhood. It's like the loss of innocence. But we also haven't seen enough. You ain't seen nothing yet. Baby, you ain't seen nothing yet, right? Because we ain't seen nothing yet. And that's why we do the work. And what's the work? The work of self-realization, of self-observation, right? The work of self-awareness. But you have to understand what that means before you do it. And you don't really understand what it means even when you do. So a whole nother thing. But that's why we do all this stuff, you see. Now watch out with Neptune close to your ascendant like that, because I call that the shape of water. It means we can adapt to like each situation that we find ourselves in. It's like being a chameleon. Like water takes the shape of whatever vessel it's in. Now, it can manifest in two primary ways. One, being very selfless and adapting to situations so you can help. It's not about you, but about what you have to do. And there's the selfish adaptation, which is manipulative. And I've known people like this. I've dated people like this who are transformers, right? They transform themselves based on what situation they find themselves in. And you never really get to know them because they don't even know them. But I don't think that's like you. And if it was like you, it's probably not anymore. So, excuse me. You also have your first house ruler in the sixth house. So facing big odds, either that or always being the villain. You know, like Batman. I'm the. They don't have to be. I believe in Harvey Dent. I hate Christian Bale as Batman because of that. Oh, I gotta growl my voice. But that movie, The Dark Knight, was great just because of Heath Ledger. Like, that was the most amazing performance. You know, it was really good. So, anyway, the eclipses. Sorry, I shouldn't be playing with my nose. The eclipses are in your 5th and 11th house. So this is like you're coming out into the light of day. You know, use protection if you're having. Oh, well, you're probably not going to be having children. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but you're probably not interested in having children at this point. I know I'm not, and I'm younger. So I'm about to be 40. So anyway, we talked about, well, Jupiter going through your 6th house, you're going to have your Jupiter return. This should be actually a pretty good time to, like I say, this is going to be a whole year transit. So getting things done, getting your house in order, getting your affairs in order, getting organized. Again, like I say, stuff that you don't want to do. Taking care of health crises, right? Taking care of animals, right? If that's something, with Jupiter in the 6th house, you're probably quite good with animals. Saturn's going through your 4th house now. So for the past 3 years, Saturn going through your 3rd house, right? It slows us down quite a bit. You know, it slows down our thinking. It slows down our thought processes. It feels like we can't communicate properly. It makes us feel a bit insular. You know, the 3rd house is our immediate community. You know, it's intelligence. It's communication quite often. So it's very stifling here. You know, we feel like we can't press forward. We can't move on. Whereas the 9th house is more about reflection and religion. The 3rd house is, excuse me, the 3rd house is more about expression. So everything feels tedious. Whereas when you get to you're not interested in any more kids. Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to be. Then Saturn goes into the 4th house, which strains our living situations and our relationships with our parents. You know, I'm not trying to be morbid whatsoever, but oftentimes we have to deal with our parents' decline during these phases. And that can be quite difficult, you know. Sometimes we get evicted. Sometimes our living situation, sometimes it falls through with our living situation. Sometimes we have a foundation leak, right? Or the landlord sells the place or something stupid like that. But it could be all sorts of things, you know. But this sort of difficulty leads you into the 5th house experience where we sort of have to go from that phase where the house was shaken up, and we get into that phase where the whole life is sort of shaken up. It's very difficult to have fun during these phases, you know, because we're always trying to figure out what's going to happen next, and we try to prepare for what's going to happen next. You know, it's like trying to hold sand or water. It just slips through your fingers until we get to that 6th house deal. Now, Stephanie said she didn't have that experience, so it'd be interesting to see if she had any experiences with her children during that 3-year time, or if she had any difficulties with children, or if her children had any particular difficulties. So, well, anyway, see if there's any last things I want to say. But please, everyone, hopefully everyone liked the stream and subscribed and all that stuff. And I have all my information, right? My Patreon, my social media stuff in the description below. So please, 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 go check out my other stuff and share it. And if anyone wants to contribute, that's more than welcome because, I'm trying to make all this shit work and it's very difficult. I don't even have 1,000 subscribers yet on YouTube. I don't even have 800. So I'm just a little girl trying to make this work. I talked about Saturn. 10th house ruler, Mercury. 10th house ruler in the 7th. I mean, that is. And it's on your descendant, right? So that's a very angular planet. And that's very potent. So, there's something potent about the job or the career or life direction situation. Now, maybe it was something that had to do with contractual relationships or contracts, legal relationships or obligations. Like, it's so funny. Billy Corgan has his 10th house ruler in the 7th house. And it's like his whole thing was about a contractual relationship with his bandmates, So anyway, it would be interesting to see what you do for work. We talked about money. Dad in the 6th house. And Jupiter's not unhappy, but Dad still probably wasn't wonderful. Jupiter square the moon. So some kind of opposition between Dad and Mom. Or some kind of schism between Dad and Mom. Mom probably had a bad temper. Mom was probably like, with Mars conjunct the moon. Anyway, I should really go. But please, everyone, like the stream and all that fun stuff. And please subscribe. Wait, where's my chat? That's not the chat. Where's the chat? What are you at? Getting terribly, chat. So, well, anyway, thank you so much and love you all. And I love seeing when you guys talk to each other. And when you all, I probably shouldn't say guys, when when you all talk to each other and are nice to each other. So I love it. Anyway, I love you too and have a wonderful whatever you're having. Mwah. End transmission. Oh, thank you for another great night. Hang out with new friends, talking life. Thank you so much. You're so sweet. And please, please, please get people to subscribe. Okay, love you. Have a wonderful whatever you're having. Glad you're able to catch me live. But you can go watch the stuff about eclipses. We talked for almost 2 hours about just eclipses. Well, the whole 3 hours was about eclipses, but 2 hours was specifically about what eclipses are, how they work, what they mean, different nuances with eclipses. So it's all great information. And I love you, and you're wonderful, and I squeeze you. I squish your head. Like I'm squishing your head. Wait, hold on. I'm squishing my head. Squishing my head. Look at that. I'm squishing my head. Sorry. For anyone who knows Kids in the Hall, if you like Kids in the Hall, we can be friends for sure. Well, I don't know. I'm sure some assholes like Kids in the Hall, but anyway.